Makabe was a fat loser who fell in love with his childhood crush, who rejected him for looking like a Discord mod. However, his life takes a turn when he hits the gym and becomes the Chad that all girls want. Now he have the mission to make his old crush fall in love with him so he can clap her in revenge. One day, after Makabe finishes up his workout, he finds Chinatsu in his room while striking poses in the mirror. This pisses him off and he scolds her for coming into his room without consent. After the two argue for a while, she finally makes him pipe down and they head down for breakfast with his mom. He meets another dilemma as the food served was full of calories, which would destroy his summer body, and when he refuses the meal, his mom goes into a frenzy. After this, he sets out to school and on his way to school, keeps admiring himself in every reflection like a narcissist. He also reminds himself of his ideology about physical looks being everything in life, and as he walks into school, the ladies feast their eyes on his chiseled jawline. Just then, he takes a moment to learn jiggle physics from the female tennis players in action, and unfortunately gets caught. Just as he thinks he's toast, they walk right past him and start interrogating a poor soul beside him. Feeling relieved, he decides to slip away but gets cornered by a flock of babes, as one of them notices he's the new transfer student. They start glazing him and asking him to join their practice. As soon as he realizes he is the main character, he begins acting like a douchebag, which for some reason works on the hotties. While walking to class, he meets a crowd of students spectating the loser version of Minato making a public confession to the most popular girl in school. After making her entrance, she proceeds to roast him like a Thanksgiving turkey, revealing the cringe things he does which make everyone's skin crawl. Witnessing this, they're all reminded why they nicknamed her the Cruel Princess, and Makabe is scared out of his mind as it's an eye-opener to how cruel the city is. Later in class, while drooling all over his table, Makabe has a nightmare and screams as he wakes up. Even when he thinks he's lost some aura points by doing so, he realizes he has gotten away with it as the class rep still talks to him normally. While they're talking, Shuri walks in and hands him part of his lunch, and although he appreciates the dude, he realizes he has to put in some extra sets while working out later to burn the surplus calories. Shortly after, the cruel queen barges into their classroom and turns her attention to his classmate, who wrote a love letter to her, tearing him to pieces along with his letter, then walks out on them. Makabe is pissed off by how rude she is, and Shuri explains that she is at the top of the food chain at the school with both beauty and brains, but has a rotten attitude, and makes a mockery of guys that ask her out. He then mentions her family name, which immediately triggers Makabe, causing him to rush after her to stare her down, excited that he didn't expect to meet her so soon. Later on, while having lunch at the cafeteria, Makabe channels his inner Joe Goldberg, making notes about Princess Cruella to find out what she likes, and he finds that she surrounds herself with only girls, as they seem to adore her. However, he finds it weird that she doesn't eat lunch with them, and starts tailing her, hoping to get some dirt on her. After a while, he spots Yoshino sneaking around and follows her to an abandoned warehouse, where he sees her handing Aki a lunchbox. Just then, he spots a spider and screams out in fear, blowing his cover. To manage the situation, he apologizes for eavesdropping, stating that he understands she may have a diet as she is very athletic, seeing the high-calorie lunch she's eating. He soon realizes he may have struck gold, as he notices 3 empty lunchboxes beside her, and that she's still hungry as her stomach chants for food. Seeing his expression, she goes into a frenzy, explaining that she has an abnormally high metabolism that makes her hungry all the time. And as he tries slipping away, she threatens him if he tells anyone about what he saw. A couple of days later, during PE class, his friend lets Makabe know about the rumor of romance between him and Aki, as they've been together most of the time for some days, but in reality, Aki is just making sure he doesn't let out her secret while also using him as a slave. Just then, he gets hit in the head with a ball and his attacker warns him not to be full of himself while the hotties rush to check on him. This makes his spidey sense tingle and he suspects he can take advantage of the situation. Later that day, as Aki heads home with her butler, she suddenly craves a quick snack and sends her butler to get something for her. Soon after she leaves, Aki is confronted by the guy she had ripped apart like a jigsaw puzzle, and while she still mocks him, he angrily grabs in hair, intending to cut her hair. However, Makabe stops him just in time and scares the dude away. Even though his hands hurt like crazy, he tries to aura farm, keeping his composure, and walks off into the sunset, thinking back on how he met Aki when they were kids and she broke his heart, calling him pig feet, and his resolve to get back at her. The following day, Makabe does his usual cool guy act, impressing all the girls around, and when he opens his locker, he falls off with pig's foot written on it, which makes him panic. While in class, Makabe becomes paranoid like he's a medicinal snow addict, trying to figure out who sent the note, and he starts suspecting everyone in the class, but can't figure out any of their motives for doing so. He gets so worked up that he almost has a heart attack as he thinks of how he'd be treated if word got out of him being a fat kid in the past. Meanwhile, everyone worries about him. It gets so bad that he can't even focus in class, and later on while hanging around the school hall, he thinks of how he'd have wasted 8 years of his life getting hot and changing his last name if Aki were to find out his secret, putting more pressure on himself. Just then, a mob of students rush to get their lunch from the cafeteria, and Makabe spots Aki's underling struggling to get past the crowd. She is spit out of the crowd, and Makbi gets to see a bit of heaven as she falls in front front of him. When he checks on her, she hands him the list of what she wants to get while talking like a crazy person, and the sump can't resist helping a damsel in distress. After getting her lunch for her, he decides to tag along while she delivers the food to Aki. To find out if the note is from Aki, she initially tries sneaking away, but he traps her in a sus way and teases her a bit to convince her to let him follow, promising to not get her in trouble with Aki. So she agrees. While on their way, seeing how terrified she looked, Makabe thinks of her as Cinderella being maltreated by Aki the stepmother. Later at the warehouse, while Yoshino rushes out to get drinks for Aki, Makabe barges in and he is amazed by how much food she has consumed. They chat a bit and he lets her know of the struggles he's experiencing, from the wound he sustained while saving her, to mess with her head, and expose if she sent the note, but he is disappointed to find that she didn't. Just then, Yoshino walks in and trips on the door, falling into a yoga position, and Aki harvests Makabe's eyes so he doesn't see paradise. After this, Yoshino hands him a drink as consolation, which makes Aki scold her, pissing Makabe off, and he puts the moves on her to tease her, telling her to rely more on him before walking out. Seeing how flawlessly he executed his act, he becomes excited as his time spent studying his sister's romance novels wasn't wasted. Meanwhile, Yoshino seems to get an uneasy feeling about Makabe. Later that day, while Makabe makes his way home, plotting his next move on Aki, he gets caught in a trap, and Yoshino shows up, calling him Pig's Foot, and asking if he wants to get into Aki's pants. Confused as to why she would know his nickname as a kid, he soon realizes that she was always with him as a kid. And after freeing him from the trap, she explains that her family had served Aki's family for generations. This makes him realize she was never maltreated but Aki's loyal lapdog, and he gets frustrated as he realizes his plans for revenge are ruined. He lets her know that he wants to give her a taste of her own medicine, and he is surprised when she tells him to go ahead with his plans, even offering to help him. Later on, Makabe still has his doubts about Yoshino's proposal and tries to figure out her intentions, but he makes up his mind to go ahead with his plans anyway, starting with getting her email. Just then, he spots Futaba, and the two talk about him adjusting to the school. He then offers to help her carry the papers she was holding to the teacher's office, and decides to rehearse getting a girl's contact using her. However, reality hits him as he has never done this before, and he immediately chickens out as he finds it difficult to ask for her contact. Following this, he meets his best bud, asking if sharing emails would expose the number of contacts he has, and he is relieved when he replies it won't, since Ali won't find out he has never asked anyone for their contact and ruin his plan. While thinking of a way to get her mail, Futaba reveals that a member of Aki's beautification committee just quit, and Makabe immediately volunteers to join as it's the perfect opportunity for him. However, as he tries meeting with her after school, she simply ignores him, which hurts his ego, making him think twice about joining the committee and triggering his low self-esteem, making him doubt if he can make a hottie like Aki falls for him. Just then, Futabu walks in on him, apologizing for bugging him with the club's activities, stating that she knows she's not like him, as he always offers to help with hesitating. Seeing the kawaii expression on her face, Makabe immediately realizes she's feeling him, and she asks if they can see a movie sometime. With every fiber of his being, Makabe turns her down as his main objective is Aki, and she apologizes for asking him out so. Suddenly, before running off, this makes Makabe realize he is the school's popular hot guy, and while he is smiling from ear to ear, he notices Aki standing behind him, who has seen everything that happened. While they talk, he notices some jealousy in her tone and explains that he doesn't care for just any random bimbo. In response, she asks who he would like to go out with, and without hesitation, he asks her out, thinking it's the perfect time. To his surprise, she simply thanks him, and when he asks for her email, she immediately agrees to give him, which stuns him. She, however, asks that she give it to him during their next duty as her phone isn't good at the moment, which he agrees to. On the scheduled day, Makabe ends up waiting for a while before finding a note that leads to a chain of hints leading right back to where he started, only for him to see her standing in the school compound with a banner that says, "I decline," which pisses him off. The following day in school, Futaba rushes in to announce that whoever fails the midterms will have to go for supplementary classes for a month while they're on holiday, causing everyone to panic. However, Makabe looks so cool and he says they'll be fine, but soon swallows his words when he finds that his best bud is in the academic danger zone. While Makabe consoles him, Futaba's face turns into a tomato as she's lost in Fantasyland, shipping the guys together. During lunch break, Makabe takes him to the library to tutor him and meets Aki there, who reveals that she's tutoring Yoshino. Aki then states that she's shocked that the bird brain can teach anyone anything to mock him. And this gives Makabe the idea to place a bet based on who'll score the highest between both pairs. And if he loses, he'll have to wear whatever nickname she'll give him on his back for the rest of the school term, but she'll go out with him if he wins. They both agree to this, and Makabe feels confident, thinking Yoshino would back him. Later that evening, while Aki tutors Yoshino, she finds out he is way smarter than she thought as Yoshino reveals that he got a perfect score on the entrance exam. This shakes her up a bit, but Yoshino promises to have her back all the way, handing her some sort of love picture album as their last resort. Meanwhile, Makabe is busy taking a million years to call Yoshino, and he almost passes out when she calls him first. She tells him she can't help him win his wager as he didn't consult her before placing the bet, and Makabe begins to panic. The next day, Shuri's scores don't seem to improve even when he claims to have studied hard, but Makabe tells him not to worry too much while passing by. Ali tests him with some questions which he answers easily, but he realizes he has to work twice as hard as he can rely on Shuri. The next couple of days, Makabe works his bum off tutoring Shuri and studying, which shocks his little sister since she expected him to be working out while his mom supports him by bringing him meals. On the day of the test, Makabe asks if Shuri is prepared and he replies he is confident thanks to him. Makabe then decides to get something to drink and he meets Yohino at the vending machine, who apologizes for not supporting him. But he says it is okay since he started the fight without consulting her, adding that he worked hard and is confident he'll win. While handing him a drink, she replies that it doesn't matter anymore and runs off, which confuses Makabe. As the tests begin, Makabe suddenly develops a running stomach and thinks Yoshino put laxatives on the drink she gave him. He becomes pissed as he thinks she wouldn't stoop so low to win the wager, but when he rushes to confront Amu in her class, he finds that she was absent from school, which automatically wins him the bet. Afterward, he discovers that the cause of his running stomach is the breakfast his mom made and ends up taking the supplementary class with Aki. Although their bet ended in a draw, Yoshino still sets up a date for Makabe and Aki to go out, then mocks him for giving up so easily when he gets surprised. On the scheduled day, Makabe is shocked to meet Aki wearing what looks like a fairy costume and saves her from a creep who is harassing her. When he asks what she's wearing, she claims he isn't experienced in the dating field, and it's a usual thing for girls to wear costumes on their first date to break the ice. However, he soon finds that Yoshino convinced her to wear that, as she'll believe anything she tells her, and Yoshino tells him to trust her plan, while he makes up his mind to give his all to score some points with her. Afterward, Makabe meets up with Aki, and when he expresses his surprise that she agreed to go out on a date with him, she defensively says that Yoshino put her up to it since he was so heartbroken from failing the test. After watching a movie, the two hang out at a cafe and Makabe is amazed by how much food she is consuming. Just then, a little kid confronts her about her dress, and before she can make a fool of herself, Makabe runs off with her. He then explains that Yoshini lied to her, which upsets her, and they decide to get her some clothes at a mall nearby. While changing, she lets out a scream of frustration and Makabe rushes to check on her, but gets a knuckle sandwich as a reward. Aki, however, watches over him while he's passed out, and he realizes that she hasn't changed that much since they were kids. After apologizing for barging in on her, the two go their separate ways, and while Yoshino gets an update on how the date went, she reveals that she is backing his plan to help Aki learn a bit of humility. The next day, after he had studied his sister's rom-com mangas for pickup lines to use on Aki, Makabe feels fully equipped to enter the next phase of his revenge plan on Aki like he's Batman with prep time. When he arrives in class, he specifically sits beside her, which gives her the ick, but she continues doing her thing. He, however, does not stop staring at her, and when she asks why he's being a creep, he drops a whack line about having eyes only for her, draining the life out of her own eyes. After school, Aki gets impatient while waiting for Yoshino to get her umbrella as it is pouring heavily, and Makabe shows up out of nowhere, handing her an umbrella, then drops another whack line that makes her skin crawl before rushing into the rain, thinking he nailed it. However, Yoshina meets up with him later on to let him know that Aki thinks his lines are hot dookie, which triggers him as he spent a lot of time mastering those lines, and she advises him to switch things up, give her some distance by being cold to her before she heads back home. Her advice does not sit right with Makabe as he thinks she may end up hating him, or just stop talking to him altogether, destroying the progress he's made so far. The following day, when he runs into her in the school's hallway, he fights the urge to talk to her and just walks by her, even when she tries returning his umbrella. Then he keeps treating her like a ghost for the next couple of days, staying far away from her like she had a new strain of COVID-19. And this hurts him a lot as he thinks it'll go on like that forever. This continues until she decides to confront him, and her attitude seems more aggressive than he expected, so he tries to bail on her, but she tosses the umbrella at him and blocks his path. Finally, he finds an escape route, but she tackles him to the floor, asking why he has been ignoring her, so he assumes his wish of making her fall for him is over. However, he is surprised to see her in a very vulnerable state and decides to give up on his ignoring act, telling her he did it on purpose. Although she says he's awful for doing so, he sees this as an opportunity to come clean and confess his feelings. But before he can complete his confession, she asks why he likes her. He thinks of all the reasons he likes her, but refuses to tell her, giving the excuse of not thinking it through before running off to Yoshino. When they meet, she is disappointed that he hasn't thought that far, and he begs her to tell him that perfect line that'll make her heart explode. The following day, as he's about to drop a letter at Aki's locker like Yoshino advised, Aki runs into him, so he hands her the letter containing his feelings for her, but she tosses it in the trash, claiming she hates him. He tries explaining himself, but she shuts him up, stating she sees through his playboy act and then runs off while he tries to stop her. Just then, Yoshino meets him and he expresses his confusion about her mood since she was so cute the previous day, which made him think things were going well. When Yoshino says she'll take it from there, he becomes giddy, but his happiness is cut short when she tells him to butt out of her plan since he can't even tell a girl why he likes her. This hurts him deeply, and he decides to not be a loser by taking matters into his own hands. Meanwhile, Aki is feeling heartbroken at a park close by because she had seen him run off to meet Yoshino the last time she met Makabe, which made her think there was something between them, and she felt played as she thought he was two-timing them. Just then, Yoshino meets her there, and Aki asks why she didn't tell her about her thing with Makabe, trying to put up a tough act. In response, she explains that she met Makabe to advise him about his relationship with her, also adding that he emailed and called her, but she still acts like it wasn't getting to her, claiming she can never be hurt by a loser like Makabe. However, Yoshino sees through her act, but Aki says she won't get hurt by a guy again, unlike in the past, and she's not going to fall in love with Makabe. Yoshino then tells her it's okay to let her guard down as Makabe has eyes for her only, and she knows Aki likes him too. But before Aki can deny this, Yoshino pulls a Batman disappearance on her. On her way back home, she keeps thinking about how she had kept her distance from people to protect her heart, and while lost in thought, she walks into the middle of the road. Before a car could run into her, Yoshino pulls her away and scolds her for putting herself in danger, as it almost gave him a heart attack. Seeing how much he cares, she almost tells him how she feels about him, but gets interrupted by some bimbo who almost runs her over. The chick suddenly runs into Makabe's arms, claiming she has been longing to see him, confusing Makabe as he doesn't know the chick. While Makabe drools over her like a bulldog, the mysterious girl thanks God for reuniting her with him. Although he thinks she has the wrong guy, then the girl's bodyguard takes her away, leaving Makabe confused. This makes Aki almost blow her head off in anger, and even when he tries clearing up his name, she leaves angrily without believing him. The next day, while thinking of a way to pacify Aki, he suffers through the lunch crowd to get Aki a lot of snacks to bribe her, since she won't be able to refuse to talk to him if he gives her food. But when he arrives at the gym storage room, he is ambushed by Yoshino, who reveals that she has the order not to let him get close into the warehouse. When she asks what he did to piss her off, he tells her what happened with the mysterious girl, and that also angers Yoshino since she doesn't believe him either. She accuses him of being a greedy douchebag and that he doesn't understand the situation, before leaving him to fend for himself. Seeing she has forsaken him, he tries coming up with tacky lines to deliver while giving her the food, but ends up leaving them at the door, and as soon as he turns his back, Aki grabs them without him seeing her. While trying to figure stuff out, Makabe doesn't sleep even a little that night, and develops dark circles under his eyes the next day. But he still can't stop thinking about the mysterious girl, which makes his friends worry about him. Suddenly, the mysterious chick enters the classroom as the teacher announces the arrival of a transfer student, and she introduces herself as Neko while the whole class glazes her. Later on, Makabe decides to talk to her before the next period, but she is soon surrounded by a bunch of her girls admiring her, and during the next break gives it another go, but the crowd of bimbos block him off. After a while, his friends come up with the plan of sending Shuri in to infiltrate the fortitude of girls, but Makabe gathers the courage to move in regardless of the crowd. Before he can utter a word, the girls let out a scream and tell him that according to the new girl, she transferred schools because of him, which catches him off guard. She then narrates how 3 years ago she was asking for donations for charity on a cold winter night, and Makabe gave her his jacket to protect her from the cold, and then donated to her cause, rizzing her up. Since that moment, she said she has been hooked on him, and the girls get excited by the story. However, Makabe is in shock as he was still a fatty 3 years back. Meanwhile, the whole class eats up her lies, so he decides to run with her somewhere private to confront her, but she soon trips and starts coughing up something red, which makes him freak out, looking for help. However, when he's about to call an ambulance, he spots a ketchup sachet fall from her hand, which triggers him. He then asks why she lied to their class, and she says she's too embarrassed to tell the truth, further confusing Makabe, and while he digs further, she just says that she has been yearning for him. Even though he finds Nico very cute unlike Aki, he rejects her because he must focus on his revenge and tells her that he likes someone else, which saddens Nico. However, she asks him to show her the girl in question, and he takes her to Aki's classroom, thinking that upon seeing Aki, she will give up on him. On the contrary, Neko sees Aki and thinks that it will be easy to get rid of her, then enters the classroom to introduce herself to Aki, telling her that she envies that she has Makabe's affection. Suddenly, a gust of wind lifts Nico's skirt, revealing that she is in the ranks of the commandos, which makes Makabe's face red. Seeing this, Nico meets him and says she's just glad that she was able to meet him, and this makes Aki more upset with her, causing her to storm out of the class. Immediately, Makabe chases after her, saying that he doesn't know Neko, but Aki doesn't believe him, and accidentally punches a teacher while struggling with Makabe. Later on, as punishment, the teacher sends them to clean the pool, and Aki is still angry with him, so she gets as far away from him as she can, which pisses him off. So he sprays her with a hose to annoy her, and to get back at him, she fills a bucket with water to throw at him, but slips and falls into the pool, making Makabe glad. However, he notices she seems to be drowning and quickly jumps in to save her, but later finds out that her feet can touch the bottom of the pool. She mocks him because he didn't want to get wet, and he says that his body jumped on its own, then yells at her, saying if he said he saved her because he liked her, she wouldn't believe him since she has her guard up. Just as he is about to give up on her, she says that if he likes her, he should prove it to her, and when he asks what he could do, she replies that he could kiss her. Meanwhile, Yoshino is stuck waiting for Aki in the school compound, and Neko meets her there, asking where she could find Makabe. In response, Yoshino asks why she thought she knew his whereabouts, and Neko says she had a hunch that she'd know them. The two sit there in awkward silence. While in the pool, Makabe panics because he always believed that his revenge plan would end with asking him to kiss her and rejecting her. But now, she wants him to kiss her in the middle of his plan. She mocks him as she notices him hesitating to come close to her. But since he must do it, he imagines that she is a ham and tries to kiss her. But she panics and punches him, which makes him confused and pissed. Fortunately for both of them, Futaba and the swim team show up asking what they were doing, so he explains that they were cleaning up the pool and decided to cool off in it for a while. They then ask for the pool for practice, and before leaving, Aki tells Makabe that she now believes that he likes her, but she doesn't care. After that, Makabe goes to the schoolyard to dry in the sun, and Nico meets him there. She pours him a cup of tea containing supplements, which he finds weird at first, and she explains that it is to warm him up since it is not good to lower his temperature. She then starts blabbing about the benefits of teas and electrolytes, but as a gym bro, he couldn't care less, making her pout, which he finds cute. Unexpectedly, he throws her a trick question, asking her what she likes about him like Aki asked him, and it is something impossible to answer because she didn't know anything about him, so her wrong answer will give him a chance to easily shoot down her feelings towards him. To his surprise, Nico says that she likes that he is so modest that he doesn't know his charms, telling him he's a nice person, and with that, she walks off, leaving him mind blown. Later on, Neko is followed by Yoshino as she has a bad feeling about Neko and wants to find out what she is up to. But when they arrive at Makabe's house, Yoshino is discovered by Neko's butler, who wants all the smoke from Yoshino, but Neko tells her to stand down. Even in that situation, Yoshino still tries to act clueless, but gives up the act when Neko says that it must be hard being Aki's assistant. Yoshino asks what she wants from Makabe, to which Neko insists that he saved her a few years ago, generating more distrust from Yoshino, but just then, Makabe's mother sees them outside and takes them into the house. Meanwhile, as Makabe is on his way back, he plans on using Nico's reply to his question about Aki the next time they meet, and when gets home he thinks that he came to the wrong house because he meets both Neko and Yoshino cooking in his kitchen, but snaps back to reality when he sees his mom. After freaking out for a while, he suddenly takes Yoshino to his room and asks why they're in his house. So she explains to him that his mom saw them and immediately went into a frenzy, thinking that she and Nico were his fans running around the house, and decided to teach them how to cook fried shrimp. After hearing this, Makabe gets into panic mode and wants to get them out of the house as quickly as possible, but Yoshino is more concerned with exploring his room, which is full of exercise machines. Suddenly, Neko enters the room too and says that it is a perfect room for rehabilitation, which scares Makabe, who immediately drags her out of there, after which he takes them down to eat. When they get to the table, Makabe becomes stiff with fear as the food is so high in calories, and to not be rude, he takes the fried breading off the shrimp to reduce the calorie load. Meanwhile, Neko just eats a bunch of supplement pills and vitamins with tea, which angers Makabe's mom, but she soon calms down because Yoshino seems to be enjoying the meal. Shortly after, Chinatsu suggests ending the night by playing with fireworks in the yard, although Makabe thinks they should leave immediately. However, the girls proceed to put on yukatas, and while Neko helps Chinatsu with her yukata, Yoshino trauma dumps on Makabe, telling him about the firework experiments Aki used her to perform, making him pity her. Later on, after watching the fireworks with Neko, Makabe's mom brings out some watermelon for them to munch on, and while they are having fun, Makabe internally thanks his sister for taking the girls out of the house, and can't stop admiring Nico as she seems like a kind of pretty girl. He thinks maybe if she wasn't a pathological liar, he would fall for her, but that doesn't matter because he should focus on his revenge plan against Aki. Later on, Nico's butler picks her up and Makabe accompanies Yoshino to the main road to take a taxi, and she asks him not to get entangled by Nico. Meanwhile, back at home, Makabe's mother and Chinatsu are overjoyed to see him doing well socially. They had always worried that he might grow up to be a lonely boy, withdrawn and isolated, especially given his quiet nature and rocky past. Now, watching him interact with others and form bonds, they're pleasantly surprised. His mom in particular feels a strange sense of familiarity when she sees one of the girls he's been hanging around with. She's almost certain she's seen her before, though she can't quite place where or when. The next day at school, Makabe gathers his courage and corners Aki for a private conversation. With a sincere expression, he tells her that he admires how modest she is, so much so that she doesn't even seem to recognize her own charms. Aki, however, narrows her eyes at him and responds coldly, saying that she's not fooled by such a cliché line. She knows her worth perfectly well and she refuses to fall for empty flattery. Yoshino, who overhears the exchange, is visibly irritated. She can't believe Makabe would be so clueless as to recycle a line that Neko once used, especially on Aki of all people. To her, it's a foolish move that only complicates an already tense dynamic, and she's starting to wonder what exactly Makabe is trying to accomplish. Days later, they finish up with their exams and summer finally begins. While in class, Aki suddenly barges in, yelling at Makabe as he had continued with his plan, by plotting to spend the summer with Aki, and previously he left Aki a pamphlet, inviting her to the beach for some alone time together. However, she rejects him, saying that she's going to spend her summer on a remote island, and to make him jealous, she invites Shuri to come with her, but poor Shuri panics and hugs Makabe, saying that he will go if Makabe comes along. This gives Makabe the upper hand, saying that they are a package deal, which frustrates Aki, and to make matters worse, Neko and Futaba invite themselves. Seeing this, Makabe dares her to say no since she'll spend her whole summer alone on the island, and Aki is forced to agree to let them all go with her to the island. Days later, everyone takes a yacht heading to the island, and Yoshino decides to have a chat with Makabe to tell him that she has been investigating Miko for days and was unable to find a connection between him. Even with this, he doesn't give it much thought as nothing explains her attachment to him and says she should not worry as his revenge will not be shaken by Neko. However, Yoshino warns that if he does not make any progress with Aki on the island, she will tell the whole truth to Aki, which scares the crap out of him. On arrival at the island, they are greeted by Aki's father's secretary, who looks kind, but inside, she's an angry woman who just got her heart broken, and seeing Aki with a boy triggers her. Meanwhile, Makabe can't stop thinking about Yoshino's warning, so he decides to be bolder and takes a huge risk by introducing himself to Yusaki as Aki's boyfriend, thinking it'll score him some emotional points with Aki. This leaves everyone speechless, and Aki sends him flying from her embarrassment. To Aki's surprise, Yuzaki says that she's glad Aki is over her boy-hating phase, and that a boyfriend may help her get fat in the right places, making Aki blush. Suddenly, Aki takes Makabe somewhere private to talk and complains to him about what he did, but he slightly says that she could have refused to go along with it, but she didn't. He goes on to say that it's because she likes to keep up appearances, and Aki does not deny it, instead says that this will all be an act, and if he takes advantage of the situation, she will deny the relationship in front of everyone. Later on, they all put on their swimsuits and head to the beach. On arrival, Makabe shows off his body but is embarrassed as everyone ignores his showboat except Shuri. While he chats with Shuri, Neko pulls up to meet them and clings to Makabe, then starts flirting with him, which makes him panic. Fortunately or him, Aki appears and separates them, reminding Neko that they are dating, and if Yuzaki sees her offering herself that way, she will think that Makabe is a cheap playboy and Neko will be seen as the girl who got played. Something embarrassing to her family, making Neko back off for now. After that, Aki takes Makabe to another side of the beach, away from the others, and orders him to bring her some food, which shocks him as he was expecting her to get all lovey-dovey. But she says no one is around, so she doesn't have to put on an act. Even though he's pissed off, Makabe heads out to get the food as he's already used to it and meets Yuzaki already preparing a meal for Aki. Yuzaki then comments that he must truly love Aki since he's running such errands for her, and he just sighs. Then he asks what things they can do on the island for fun. In response, Yuzaki lists a number of events and with an evil smile tells him that they can take a courage test, which Makabe thinks will be a great idea to make on Aki. While he returns with the food to Aki, Yuzaki plans to use the courage test to keep him away from Aki, and thinks back to when she started working with Aki's family. Soon after she arrived, she met a very sad Aki because her plump friend had just left her without telling her anything, and this caused Aki to hate all boys. Seeing Aki reject all advances made towards her is something that pleases Yuzaki because she hates men too, but she is worried that Makabe would lead Aki astray. That night, everyone gets together to enter the haunted house, where Yuzaki recommended and Makabe plans to play the night in Gamur, intending to make Aki fall for him. Waiting for them, there's Yuzaki with a mask to scare Makabe and make him look ridiculous in front of Aki, but everything goes wrong because she runs into Yoshino, who is also wearing a mask. She gets scared and runs away horrified, then sees Neko, who spills some ketchup from her mouth, but Yaki thinks she's a ghost, making her run into a pole as she goes into a frenzy. When she opens her eyes, she's being carried on Makabe's back, and he confesses that he asked Yoshino to help scare Aki so that he can save her and look like a hero, which makes Yuzaki feel guilty since apparently Makabe is a good boy and really in love with Aki. A few days after, the trip on the island comes to an end, and Makabe is unable to advance with Aki, but fortunately Yoshino tells him that she will not tell the truth to Aki, saying that he improved his relationship with Aki, but tells him not to slack off. Back in the city, while Makabe admires his body after a workout session, he receives a call from Aki which leaves him so surprised that he takes a while to answer. She says that they should meet because he forgot some clothes on the island, and she wants to return them to him. That same night, he goes to meet Yoshino and tells her the good news about Aki wanting to see him, since it shows he made progress with gear, but she gets worried, asking him to process the situation carefully before acting, because a little slip-up could destroy all his efforts. Upon returning home, he starts doing his summer school homework, and realizes that the photo of him with Aki is not in his drawer, which makes him freak out. He soon figures that Neko is the culprit. The next day, Aki meets up with Makabe at a cafe and she returns his clothes, stating that she wanted to mail them, but Yuzaki forced her to hand them to him personally, making him happy since he knows he has an ally in her. While they talk, he can't stop thinking about the lost photo and that Neko would recognize Aki in the picture, but he isn't sure she'll know he's the fatty in the photo. While he continues not paying attention to Aki, she tells him that Futaba invited them to go to the pool, but she gets angry because he doesn't respond to her. So she leaves suddenly, saying it seems she's bothering him, which bothers Makabe. This makes him realize he's getting too distracted, and just then, he receives a call from Neko, inviting him to the pool with her, but suddenly changes her mind, asking him to meet her right now since she's alone. The simp couldn't refuse her invitation and rushes to her place. When he arrives at her house, he gets so nervous to go in since he's not used to visiting girls, but he finally grows some balls and forges ahead. She asks how he came so fast and he makes up an excuse of just being in the area, which she gobbled up, while she boils tea for him. He then asks for directions to the bathroom as an excuse to find her room to recover the photo she took. He finally finds her room since her desk is full of pills and vitamins, but he also finds his favorite manga, and while he's distracted, she unfortunately enters the room. She says she got to know about the manga since she saw it in his room, and this confirms she took it. So he stops pretending and asks her for his photo. She immediately owns up to taking it and pulls it out of her bouncy inventory, telling him that she stole it because he looks so cute. Although he doesn't believe her because when he was a child he was very chubby, but Neko doesn't care about that, which almost makes him cry since no one ever told him that. Then she suddenly moves closer to him and kisses him. This is the virgin's first kiss, and he can't believe how soft a girl's lips are. While he's still processing everything, she throws him onto the bed, making him rethink all of his life decisions about revenge and life. She then climbs on top of him after assuring him they'll not be interrupted. He lets her do it since nothing matters for a tiny moment. Not even his revenge, but the memories of his hard childhood and the assault he experienced as a fatty brings him back to his senses, and he moves away from her. Before leaving, he tells her that he realized that she doesn't really like him, as she doesn't know how deep he suffered, and she doesn't know how to answer him, which shows him that it is true. He gets up to leave, and while walking away, she accuses him of choosing Aki over her, confess that this is his revenge. Neko then lies there crying and wondering if this is the famous heartbreak that she read so much about. The next day, all the friends meet outside the pool and Makabe shows up looking like crap, while Futaba tells them that Neko won't come because she feels sick. However, Makabe feels a little guilty and thinks he's the major reason she didn't show up. They spend the entire day engaging in various fun and lighthearted activities, enjoying each other's company in what is supposed to be a cheerful and relaxing outing. However, despite the seemingly pleasant atmosphere, Makabe remains visibly uneasy and on edge throughout the day. His discomfort doesn't go unnoticed, especially by Aki, who begins to pick up on the subtle signs that something is clearly bothering him, although she doesn't immediately confront him about it. Later on, feeling overwhelmed and needing some space, Makabe quietly slips away from the group without drawing much attention. He finds Yoshino and takes the opportunity to speak with her privately. During their conversation, Yoshino brings up the topic of Neko and pointedly asks Makabe what exactly happened between the two of them. Despite her curiosity and concern, Makabe remains tight-lipped, choosing not to disclose the details of what transpired. The situation takes a sudden turn when Neko's bodyguard unexpectedly arrives at the pool. She confronts Makabe in front of everyone, accusing him of having done something to Neko, who, to everyone's surprise and concern, has been missing since the previous night. The situation becomes even more serious when the bodyguard reveals that Neko had left without taking her essential seizure medication. This detail shocks Makabe, as he was completely unaware that Neko suffered from any kind of medical condition. His surprise quickly turns into confusion and distress as he begins to question why she would keep such an important part of her life hidden from him. The tension intensifies when the bodyguard further claims that she knows for a fact that Makabe and Neko had met alone at her apartment the previous day. This revelation stuns everyone present, leaving them speechless. With all eyes on him and nowhere to hide, Makabe feels cornered and emotionally overwhelmed. Realizing there's no point in continuing to avoid the truth, he finally speaks up. In a moment of raw honesty, he admits that he had indeed met with Neko and that he rejected her confession, making it clear that no matter what, his heart will always belong to Aki. Even with his reason, Aki didn't like that Makabe and Neko met alone in her apartment, so she completely ignores his confession and makes a plan to look for Neko, splitting the group into two, leaving Makabe to wander around alone, which really hurts him as he thinks she doesn't give a crap about him. While the girls stick together looking for Neko, Makabe searches for her alone but cannot find her. So he heads into the school thinking that maybe she is there, and to his surprise he runs into Aki, who had the same idea as himself. Also, he is shocked that she is so committed to finding Neko when she doesn't even like her. But Aki says that she feels bad for Neko because it sucks to be rejected by the boy she likes. This confuses Makabe even more since she rejected him and gave him a horrible nickname. She still currently continues to break the hearts of the boys who offer their feelings to her. He then decides to ask her if she remembers the nickname Pig's Foot, but she doesn't seem to understand what he's referring to. But before he can confront her, many paper planes suddenly begin to fall from the school roof, and Makabe figures that it is Neko since she was reading his favorite manga, and there is a scene where the protagonist is rejected, then makes paper airplanes with the love letters that she was never able to send him. Immediately, he dashes up to the roof and finds Neko with many letters that say, "I love you." She then tells him that she knew he would find her there, and he tells her not to do such a thing again, as she may not have the energy for that, which she proves correct as she suddenly falls in his arms. After that, Neko is taken to the hospital, and the guilt consumes Makabe since he rejected her without thinking about her feelings. He was only thinking about his revenge. While he's still overthinking his decision, her bodyguard tells everyone that Neko is stable and wants to talk to Aki alone, which stuns Makabe, causing him to panic more. After a while, Aki tells Makabe that Neko is waiting for him, and when he meets her, she says she's ready to come clean about everything. She reveals how she was very popular in her previous school, but people treated her like a charity case because of her ailment, and it turns out she was scheduled to have surgery abroad at her grandfather's request, but she asked him for time telling him that she wanted to fall in love first. So she chose a photo at random from a bunch of candidates, and that photo turned out to be Makabe. However, he does not remember having a photo with her and can't believe that this is all due to a random choice. Following this, she tells him that although she didn't manage to have a relationship with him, since everything was based on lies, he gave her the experience of a broken heart. Then she tells him that lies are always discovered and thanks him for all the lovely memories they had. Then, she says goodbye to him, since she will surely have to go away soon. Meanwhile, just outside of Neko's hospital room, an emotionally charged moment unfolds as Futaba gathers the courage to open up to Yoshino. With a mix of hesitation and vulnerability, she confesses that she too harbors feelings for Makabe. Despite the depth of her emotions, she admits that she is fully aware of the reality Makabe's heart belongs to Aki. The confession seems to weigh heavier on Shuri, who stands beside them, completely frozen in shock, her expression unreadable and her thoughts evidently racing. In the midst of this charged atmosphere, the door to Nico's room opens quietly. Makabe steps out, his face clouded with sadness and an unmistakable heaviness in his demeanor. He doesn't say a word to anyone. Without making eye contact or acknowledging those around him, he silently walks past the group and heads straight out of the hospital. Back inside the room, Neko remains seated, her bodyguard quietly approaching her with a concerned expression. He gently asks if she is truly okay with letting Makabe go, clearly aware of the emotional weight behind her decision. Nico, holding back her emotions, softly responds that it's the right thing to do. As she speaks, her gaze drops to a photograph she clutches in her hand, an old picture from their childhood. The image captures a moment from a formal family gathering, a party where both their families were present. It is then revealed that this is where they first met, though heartbreakingly, Makabe has no recollection of that day or the bond they once shared. Later at night, Aki can't stop thinking about Neko and how she assured her that she was totally rejected by Makabe, convincing her to accept his love. While thinking about love, Aki can't help but remember her crush from the past and how he was plump and cute. She thought of how she loved him so much that she blushed just thinking about him. Just then, a plump figure appears out of the shadows, introducing himself as her long-lost love. Meanwhile, Makabe's mom panics as he decides to leave home, but he claims her down, explaining to her and Shifuyu that he's just going on a camping trip to gain new muscles and reformulate his plan to make Aki fall for him. Back at Aki's house, the plump dude asks to talk to the head of the family, but he is greeted by Aki's father's assistant. He then hands him a letter which has been written by his grandfather, containing a promise from both families. This promise consists of marrying Aki and Gasu, which stuns everyone. Meanwhile, on a distant mountain, Makabe trains relentlessly and finally gains a higher-tier physique. A few days later, the second term begins, and the students meet again. And as soon as Aki arrives at school, a boy asks her on a date, and she rejects him, earning admiration from her Girl Scouts who all praise her ability to crush hot guys. However, one of her disciples calls her out about Makabe and how she took him to a private island, spending lots of time with him, but she tries denying that fact. Just then, Gasu shows up and Aki starts melting like ice on a hot summer day. Seeing this, Aki's fans don't understand why she treats him kindly, as they expected her to torch him like the others, and they are shocked when Aki agrees to taking him to her private island someday, causing them to think she's just into chubby guys. On the other hand, Makabe arrives more toned than before and is shocked to meet Neko at school. She explains that she already had the surgery and the 1-month rest she took was enough for her to recover, which makes Makabe wonder why he was so worried about her in the first place. After that, he goes to look for Aki to give her a gift from the countryside, but is left speechless when he sees her talking to a chubby boy. And to make matters worse, the boy says that his nickname is Masamune, but he can call him Gasu. Not only that, he reveals that he and Aki are engaged, which destroys Makane. Hearing this, Makabe runs to talk to Yoshino and she tells him that she tried to call him several times but he had no reception on the mountain. She then informs him that she verified the letter with calligraphic tests and the letter is real, adding that the worst thing is that Aki took it well and she acts as if she is in love with the chubby dude. During the rest of the school day, Makabe observes Gasu and realizes that he is intelligent, kind, gets along well with boys and girls and makes Aki blush, something he has not been able to achieve with his muscular body. After seeing all this, he meets with Yoshino, ranting about how he doesn't understand why Aki gets along with Gasu when she gave him hell for being chubby when he was a child, so Yoshino apologizes, but he doesn't put the blame on her. On the other hand, Aki's fans gather to talk about Aki's strange behavior as she used to hate boys, but now she is stuck with Gasu. Just then, Hasu walks in and joins their conversation, confessing that he's engaged to Aki, but for him she's a goddess, and he does not intend to touch her or kiss her, and that calms the girls who decide to protect him instead. The next day, Makabe is distracted thinking about how to get to talk to Aki, which earns him a scolding from Futaba, who reminds him that they are choosing what to present at the school festival. He says that he'll agree to anything, and without knowing, he agrees to be the prince of the play where Shuri will be Snow White since he is prettier than the girls in the class. Later on, he tries to talk to Aki, but she easily gets rid of him and leaves with Gasu. The whole thing is observed by Aki's admirers who want to get rid of Makabe, since their goddess Aki will be safer with Gasu. The next day, the student council receives the proposals from the second grade students and notices that Class A and Class B have proposed doing the Snow White play. Since there cannot be two plays with the same theme, one of the classes must change the proposal, but both their representatives refuse to change. Since an Akai fan group member is in charge of the council, she turns down Futaba's proposal, and while she argues with the Aki fan, Ake shows up claiming that a Sleeping Beauty show where only men leads would be disastrous. They go back and forth and Makabe intervenes, saying that both classes should present Snow White, then put it to a vote and whoever wins will get to host their play, which they agree to. He then pulls Gasu aside to make a wager that whoever wins will get to dance with Aki at the afterparty, and Gasu accepts his challenge. The days go by and Futaba becomes more and more irritable with Shuri since he doesn't know how to act like a girl, and the play is the next day. Being tired of so many scoldings, Shuri runs away, and when Makabe goes after him, he runs into Gasu, who makes fun of Makabe, saying that he doesn't know how to treat girls unlike him who treats Aki so well, that she's falling in love with him more and more, giving an example of how he gives her chocolates every break, then scolds him for triggering Aki by wall slamming her, just because he saw it in some magazine. This crushes Makabe, who doesn't know what to say since it seems like he's getting advice from a pro, but he just makes up his mind to win and takes notes of what he said. At the end of the day, Aki and Gasu walk home together and he tells her that he ran into Makabe, but that puts her in a bad mood. So he quickly apologizes, which warms her heart, and she says while smiling that he has always been kind, which makes Gasu feel a bit guilty since he's not the chubby friend Aki remembers, and in reality, he comes from a very poor family. He thinks back to a year ago when he ran into Aki, who was still hung over Makabe at the time, and it occurred to him to use Makabe's identity to improve the living conditions of his family. But the only problem is that the real Makabe is getting in the way of his plans. At night, Makabe works out relentlessly in the cold, and even when his mother and sister try to cover him up, he's as stubborn as a donkey, trying to prove he's the peak of health. The following day, the whole school gathers for the school festival, and Makabe can't stop sneezing, because last night he climbed on the roof with little clothes to show his mom that he wasn't sick. But it was pretty chilly outside. Seeing that he may be falling sick makes him panic a bit, and just then, Neko meets him, Sweets talking him into following her to the infirmary to rest since the Battle of the Snow Whites will soon begin. She tells him that it doesn't matter if he does it wrong since she will be his dance partner at the afterparty, which she claims is a joke, and after covering him with a blanket, she goes to buy tea for both of them. On the other hand, Gasu mistakenly enters the girls' changing room to put on his clothes and immediately realizes that he made a mistake as the girls turn into Gatling guns, chasing him out. Suddenly, a strange figure shows up and tells him she knows a good spot for changing, which Gasu believes. Meanwhile, as Nico buys a drink for herself and Makabe, she runs into Shuri, who now has a crush on her. He tries to act manly but soon gives up on, and accompanies her to the infirmary to check on Makabe, but they're stunned to find that he has disappeared. Immediately, they run to tell Futaba, who begins to panic, but what they don't know is that he was taken by a Class A member. She tells Makabe that she plans to keep him there until the festival is over, which will mean Aki and Gasu dancing at the bonfire, which triggers Makabe. Meanwhile, as Class A's class rep think her plan has worked, Yoshino reports to Aki that Gasu is also lost, and the rep is frustrated because she thinks that Class B thought the same as her. This news makes Aki sad, and she thinks that he has left her for the second time before an important moment like many years ago, although no one suspects that Yoshino was the person that guided Gasu to a storage room and locked him there. Meanwhile, Makabe's captor tells him how she met Aki, stating how she was once defeated by a guy who cheated, and when he went to declare his love for Aki, she rejected him by calling him a coward. From that moment on, she had always admired Aki, a girl who can defeat someone with a single word. To guilt trip her into releasing him, Makabe tells her that she is also cheating by keeping him locked up there, and she agrees with him, so she unties him. But suddenly she receives a call from the rep who wants to talk to Makabe. The rep tells him that she proposes a tie between both plays on the condition that Makabe releases Gasu quickly, and Makabe figures that Yoshino was behind his disappearance, so he tells Mary that he does not accept the tie since Class A's play is about to start, while HEA class play will start in the afternoon, giving him a lot of time. With this, he is sure that his friends will find him, and he cuts off the call, which greatly frustrates the rep, and Aki talks to the rep, telling her that she will do the play alone since she has never needed a prince. On the other hand, Makabe manages to escape from his captor and tells his friends that they are about to win the battle of plays because Gasu is lost, but Shuri tells him that Class A's play has already started with Aki acting without a prince, causing Makabe to rush to the theater. Makabe enters the theater and is mesmerized by the play of Class A as its stage, and costumes are better than those of his class. Even Aki's performance is impeccable, and he tells Neko that they can't win, so he wants to ask Yoshino to free Gasu. But he soon discovers she's one of the 7 dwarfs who is on the stage. With no other option, he asks Neko for a favor, sending her to get his costume, then rushes behind the stage where he meets the rep. Immediately she spots him. She asks if he just wants to mock them and blames everything on Makabe, telling him that Aki carried the play alone on her shoulder, even though she knows that her prince will not arrive. Meanwhile, Aki gives her all until the scene where she falls asleep in the coffin, holding some flowers, and she remembers how in the past, she picked up a bouquet of flowers in her house and waited all day for her friend Masamune, but he never came. This makes her think that this situation will be the same, and the play will end with Snow White never waking up. As she accepts her fate, Makabe suddenly appears wearing his prince's suit, ready to save the play of Class A, which shocks everyone, and although he is very weak due to fever, he tries forcing himself to last until the kiss science, so the show would be a success. Fortunately for him, the dwarves understand that he is very sick and cover his lines, supporting him as he struggles to meet Aki. In the end, Yoshino gives him the final push so that he reaches Aki, who does not understand why Makabe is helping them, although she just wants him to complete the play, and she was expecting him to give her a fake kiss, not knowing she would receive a real kiss from him, shocking everyone in the crowd. She is so surprised that she punches him, launching him across the room like a ballistic missile, and everyone is left speechless. But Neko and the crew begin to applaud, and soon after, the audience follows them with the play finally ending. The next day, Keiko brings them together at a karaoke bar, announcing that Makabe and Aki won the awards for Best Heroes of the festival. This makes Futaba cry that her script was ruined without Makabe, and Gasu tries pointing out that he would have replaced Makabe. But Futaba immediately shuts him up, saying Makabe was a perfect pair with Shuri. After Aki calms them down, she asks why they're in such a small room for the after-party, which triggers Futaba, and Makabe steps in to prevent any fights, saying it is the only room available. Keiko suggests they have a singing competition as a way of truly settling the cultural festival beef. Just then, Aki becomes jealous as she spots Neko grabbing Makabe, and angrily says there's no need for the competition since they're sure to win. This makes Futaba crash out, and she says they'll participate in it, adding that the loser has to pay the tab. Following this, Keiko kicks off the competition, and Futaba volunteers to go first. Meanwhile, Makabe struggles to find a song for himself, and Shuri tries helping him out, but Keiko senses something is up with him. Futaba puts on a beautiful performance, getting a high score on the machine, which amazes everyone. This earns her a compliment from Aki, and she feels very proud of herself. Then Aki decides to go next. She sings better than Ariana Grande, topping Futaba's score, and everyone is left speechless. Afterward, they all start glazing her, and one by one, the rest take their turns. Soon after, Neko's turn arrives, and she says she's singing a heartbreak song because that's how she's feeling at the moment, making Makabe spaz out. As she sings, he feels very awkward. And in the meantime, Keiko notices that Makabe may not be accustomed to karaoke, so she plots to make him look pathetic while singing to make Aki lose interest in him. While Yoshino sings her song like R2-D2, Makabe excuses himself before his turn, and Sonoka, alongside her Patty, meets him outside before he can bail. They put him under a lot of pressure, and before he can reply, Aki shows up to save him, sending her minions to meet the others after scolding them. This makes Makabe think she still cares about him, but his hopes are crushed when he realizes she just stepped out to have a snack. When they return to meet the others, Aki is surprised to hear her favorite duet song come on, and Neko admits she did so, asking her to sing along with her. After the two put on an amazing show, they get into a fight, and everyone concludes that they can never see eye to eye. Finally, it gets to Makabe's turn and everyone calls him out, so he gathers the courage to sing, but when he finishes singing, he leaves the room in a lifeless state. After everyone flees the karaoke room, Makabe stays with Aki at a park close by while she waits for Yoshino to bring her food. He says that he won't leave her alone because he wants to make sure she is safe, and reminds her that she never thanked him for saving her from her, which triggers her. She realizes that he is right, and after trying to defend herself, she finally folds. Shlee saying that he can ask her for whatever he wants in gratitude, which stuns Makabe. In response, he asks her for a kiss, making Aki turn red, and she easily accepts. She then asks him to close his eyes, but instead of a kiss, he receives a roasted sweet potato. When Aki leaves, Yoshino scolds him for being so slow with his revenge, and tells him that he's very close to achieving it. This encourages Makabe, who is willing to do anything to make Aki fall in love with him, and then reject her just as she did. One morning, Masamune let out his inner narcissist and adored himself in the mirror, praising what he thought to be the perfect body. Once again, he was interrupted by Chinatsu, his sister, who reminded him of how cringe his poses were and insisted he drop the act before heading over to the airport for a school excursion to France, so he wouldn't disgrace the image of Japan. Just then, his mother appeared as well, promising him an excellent breakfast ahead of his trip. However, Masamune would have none of it and kicked them both out of his room. He scoffed at his old lowly hag for wanting to fill him up with unnecessary calories and transform him to his old hideous self. After picking up his jotter, he reaffirmed his goal in France, which was to make the cruel princess fall in love with him as revenge for calling him pig's foot when he was a cholesterol ambassador. Meanwhile, at her own house, the cruel princess Aki had finished preparing as she stared into a framed picture of her and an obese friend as kids. When she was done gazing at the hideous figures, she asked Yoshino, her assistant, to help her carry her bags for the trip. Back at Masamune's place, his mother and sister bid him farewell as he left the house on a journey to a country he wasn't familiar with. At a museum in France, a girl received a letter informing her of how trash her work was due to the lack of proper material. She stared into her horrendous drawing and wondered how she could get proper Japanese models to give her a better idea on how mangas were made. Later that day, in an open French palace, the students had arrived safe and sound as Masamune and his classmates adored the view and scope of the area. While Shuri and Futaba made weird noises and continued to exclaim about the elegance of France in comparison to their homeland, Masamune was more disturbed by the gaze of Fujinomiya, who he had rejected the season before. After he looked away in embarrassment, he saw the pompous, cruel princess and her servant walk past, reminding him of his goal to seize the romantic aura of France and make Aki fall in love with him. However, he would have to get by the ugly duckling fiancé Kanetsugu, who would try to disrupt his plans. When he turned his gaze away to take a look at the view once again, Masamune realized Paris was called the City of Love for a reason, as he was completely surrounded by couples displaying love for each other. While he fantasized about his love and dump plan, Masamune was probably struck with the thought, "Speak of the devil," as Aki approached him, insisting he took out of his spare time to have a discussion on the events that took place during their cultural festival. When she walked away, he tried to approach her, hoping to uncover her intentions. However, he accidentally struck a passerby, causing her to fall. When he tried to help her up, the weird girl in an eye patch immediately leapt in joy, confirming that Masamune was Japanese. Although Masamune and Aki were confused by the fact that a random French girl on the street understood their language, they were unable to express their surprise as the girl grabbed Masamune's head like a basketball and claimed him to be her Chikawa. After a brief cutscene, the group had settled down on a nearby bench and talked. The girl introduced herself as Muriel, and when asked by the pair how she understood Japanese, she explained that she read a lot of mangas thanks to her brother, who was a regular traveler to the country. After getting introductions out of the way, she presented a manga she was working on, which Masamune and Aki read. The pair were completely surprised by how awful the manga was, and when Muriel asked for their opinion, they informed her it was too unrealistic and would only sell to chronic degenerates. Muriel, who didn't take any offense to their words, admitted that she had been told of how garbage her work was, which was why she insisted on Mas acting as a model, due to his likeness to Chikawa, the main character of her manga. When he attempted to refuse, Muriel lined up her massive bullets in front of Masamune, hoping it would convince him. However, Aki interfered, reminding him of their plans to talk in his free time, forcing Masamune to decline the offer, to Muriel's disappointment. While later, whilst Fujinomiya looked at a painting, Shuri, who was walking in the area, stopped behind her to adore her. After mustering up courage, Shuri began to approach Fujinomiya, to the pleasure of Futaba, who was anticipating a great scene. She asked Fujinomiya whether she liked the painting. However, she was surprised to realize that her classmate had actually just lost the plot, and stared at the painting, wondering if the people in the image were feeling cold due to their lack lack of covering. When Shuri attempted to make something out of her unrequited love, she fumbled, allowing Fujinomiya to get distracted by the incoming pair of Aki and Masamune. They crashed to the ground, thankful that they had survived a near life-threatening experience. When the others asked what had happened, the pair explained that after they had rejected Muriel, they were approached by a mean but official-looking gang of thugs who worked for a man named Frank, Muriel's elder brother. He promised them nothing but pain and carnage if they refused to help Muriel, forcing them to reconsider her offer and agree to model and explain Japanese cultural rom-coms for her manga. Later that day on a boat, Masamune met up with Yoshino, who had been helping him advance his relationship with Aki. After getting the gist of the action, agreed to help Masamune once again, as she was in support of him getting together with Aki. After affirming to Masamune that she'd ensure no one got in the way of his attempt to take advantage of France, they fist-bumped to their partnership. The next day, after their first tour, Masamune and Aki headed out to meet up with Muriel, as agreed with Frank. When they got to a free park, Masamune decided to explain the flaws of the story to Muriel. He explained that the love was too unrealistic and was only possible in a love-themed country like France, making it impossible for a manga. When she asked for clarification, Masamune informed her that people enjoyed more of a slow-burn love story. However, Muriel disagreed, pulling Masamune in and proposing that simple love stories and kisses were the way to go. Just before she could seal his lips, the tsundere Aki leapt in, robbing them of their moment. When the points of Masamune and Aki began to align, Muriel seemed to have broken the fourth wall, asking if the sad, annoying love story they explained was what the pair shared, causing them to blush as they denied the allegation. At a bridge somewhere else in town, Yoshino escorted Kanetsugu as he sought to find Aki, wondering what she was doing. After realizing he was starting to suspect her deception more, Yoshino attempted to play the innocent princess act. However, Kanetsugu had already caught on to her plan to ruin his relationship with Aki. The weird, obese fiancé showed the maid a picture he had taken of her fist-bumping Masamune, implying a collusion. Although she had been caught, Yoshino lacked remorse for her actions, claiming she knew she had done the right thing. When Kanetsugu attempted to threaten her by claiming he'd tell Aki, Yoshino was completely unmoved as she walked away from the hideous fiancé. However, when he changed his target to her parents, Yoshino came to an immediate halt. Realizing she'd be cooked if he did so, he attempted to rage bait her into fully disclosing her true intentions. However, Yoshino didn't give in and simply expressed her dissatisfaction with how chopped and pathetic he was. Just before she could continue her speech, she was struck by a memory of her previous self, reminding her of her insecurities. Kanetsugu immediately took advantage of the opportunity and informed Yoshino he had already told her parents of her cheeky escapades. As the hideous victor left the scene, Yoshino stood in defeat, pained that she had let the appalling fiancé get the better of her. Meanwhile, at the park, Masamune and Aki continued their lovers' demonstration for Muriel. Although they were both equally incompetent and clueless about romance, Masamune's will to get Aki in love with him took charge, making him grab Aki's hand and take her on a walk. While they proceeded in the park, Masamune's think tank had already run out of juice, leaving the pair in a bind on what to do next. Eventually, the romantic essence of France took its course and caused the pair to look into each other's eyes lovingly. For a second, they thought they had gained a narrator, as they heard a voice describe how cringe and awkward their love was. However, it was simply Muriel who they had forgotten. Upset that her sappy moment was interrupted, Aki confronted Muriel, insisting that she make sure her presence went unnoticed and simply observe their actions. On the other hand, Masamune had an issue on his other hand, as his incel genes had gone haywire due to his walk with Aki, making it sweaty. After wondering why it didn't affect the hand which held Aki, Masamune assumed it was just nature's way of helping his endeavor. Getting Muriel sorted out, Aki took the lead next, grabbing Masamune's hand to continue the walk. However, she wouldn't go far, as the black hole in her stomach had struck again, making her irrationally hungry. After slightly mocking her for her lack of decency, Masamune decided to take Aki to a bench where they'd have lunch. When they were about to eat, the pair were unable to indulge comfortably as they remembered Muriel's gaze and wondered what cringe lovers trope they could pull to make it interesting for her. They decided to try the cringe trope. However, Masamune was too much of a chicken to go through with it, causing him to slap Aki's sandwich into Muriel's arms. Whilst the two remained confused on what to do and prepared to tap out, Aki was approached by a dog who wanted her sandwich. She petted the dog but refused to share her food, stalling the animal till eventually its owners came and apologized for their carelessness. When Masamune asked about her likeness for dogs and ownership of some, Aki informed him that she had stopped keeping dogs since her last one died due to her sentiment. When she realized they had transitioned to a better mood, Aki decided to tell Mas why she was a grade 2 foodie who couldn't accept his feelings for her, using a flashback. As a child, Aki was unable to play with Yoshino for some time due to a weird sickness. Her parents had an argument, forcing her to go outside so she could play with her dogs. While she jumped around with the mutts, she saw an obese boy getting hounded by a bunch of wannabe hooligans, causing her to send her dogs forth to scare them off. When the little cholesterol ambassador cried his thanks, Aki got his name, Makabe, and promised to aid him if the need arose. For several days, she was caught up in a buttering up contest involving her parents, who were both trying to get on her good side. However, she was more enthralled by the little big muchacho Makabe, who constantly brought her gifts and made up for his hideous appearance by making her laugh. When the time came to solidify their friendship, Aki decided it was best to toughen up the walking dumpling so he would need her help less with the bullies. After asking her dog to chase him around for a while, she finally had enough fun bullying him and got him confident enough to willingly approach the dog himself. A few days later, they decided to strike back at his previous teasers by giving them a jump scare and trapping them in a ditch before fantasizing and releasing load on them with a fire extinguisher. Later that day, she sadly informed her big friend that her parents would be living in separate houses. However, she was comforted as the boy forgot their insane weight difference and leapt on to hug her. With the flashback wrapping up, Masamune asked what happened next. However, he was hit with a part of the story he didn't know, claiming Makabe, who she didn't know was him, never showed his face to her again. In complete confusion, Masamune asked what she meant, and Aki explained that Makabe remorselessly disappeared and came back with his actual name, Kanetsugu. As if he hadn't been shocked by the story enough, the actual Masamune wondered why her version of the story was so different from what he remembered, and why Kanetsugu, the appalling fiancé, was pretending to be his younger self. Masamune meditated on a quick flashback of his own, where in actuality he was almost teased by the 3 Walmart musketeers, while flower picking, forcing him to run to Aki's help as a friend. However, he was shot down by the cruel princess who had once helped him, causing him to resolve to his glow-up date Aki and dump her plan as revenge. He remembered how the mid-musketeers trolled him for getting shot down and instantly let out his frustration, calling Aki a fake losing heroine, as she got what she deserved. After noticing the unnecessary heat in the atmosphere, Muriel butted in, requesting a ceasefire and more of the earlier lovey-dovey stuff. However, Aki had none of it, calling Masamune a bum before walking away. After the fight, Muriel was unable to convince Masamune to follow Aki. Later that night, Muriel was called by Frank, who asked why the Japanese rom-com models left her. When he attempted to force them back into it as they did before, Muriel threatened him not to, as she had found a way to give her manga a happy ending from their sad display. Meanwhile, the disbanded couple had both reunited with their respective friend groups as Aki leapt into the arms of her best friend Yoshino in tears. A few days later, the class returned to Japan, and the students returned to their homes. Yoshino, who had been snitched on by Kanetsugu, faced punishment from her parents for her wrongdoings. The next day at school, she was hauled into a lunch rush by Aki, who was suffering from constant hunger due to a black hole in her stomach, which made her burn calories insanely fast. After receiving orders from her master, Yoshino decided to make a quick stop. Although she had gotten into trouble after being caught the first time, she met up with Masamune, who was found exercising. They talked about the events that unfolded at France, where Masamune and Aki fell out, and after reaching a conclusion that her memories of the past were utter garbage because she went through a lot, Yoshino reaffirmed Masamune of her help. However, she couldn't promise the same effectiveness she had before. Later that day, Masamune was having a corny daydream where he reconciled with Aki and got her to fall in love with him. However, he had gotten too caught up in the dream, causing him to fall off his chair and create a small scene. He was approached by Fujinomiya, who asked him what had happened. After convincing her he was okay, she helped him up and invited him on an outing after school, telling him that she had somewhere she wanted to visit with him. After school, he escorted her to a hospital where she performed a follow-up checkup. When they were out, she invited him on a walk, which Masamune accepted awkwardly. While walking, Masamune told Fujinomiya about what had happened in Paris and how it was the cause of his clumsiness. Although she was a bit flabbergasted by how corny the entire scenario was, she was more interested in the nature of his date and dump plan. After confirming he didn't want to date her out of love but purely revenge, Fujinomiya tried to reignite a love triangle arc, hugging Ma from his back. Just then, Masamune noticed a clump of familiar faces he didn't want to get any close to. He immediately grabbed Fujinomiya's arm and informed her they'd flee, not wanting to give them in the distance any chance. Meanwhile, back at school, Aki and Yoshino were joined by the hideous fiancé, who offered to take Aki out. After hearing the proposal, Aki accepted. However, Yoshino, who would naturally follow Aki on an outing of that nature, decided she didn't want to stare at the appalling boy for the rest of her evening, so she'd go home. A little while after Yoshino had left, Aki and Kanetsugu were also approached by familiar faces. Somewhere in the city, Masamune and Fujinomiya had run out of gas and couldn't continue running. As the classy gangsters from France approached, Masamune and Fujinomiya attempted to brainstorm ideas which could get them out of their situation. Before they could come up with a decent plan, Frank appeared, accusing Masamune of ditching his sister and running from France without properly aiding her. He reached into his coat, scaring Masamune, who thought he was about to paint the alleyway they were in red. However, he was surprised to see Frank pull out a manga's manuscript. Frank informed him that his sister, the French otaku, had gained a little from their time together and drew up a decent manga at the expense of her beauty sleep. The French mafia boss decided he'd leave the scene in style as he farmed on his way out, telling Masamune his story didn't need to be one with a shitty ending. The French otaku had officially confirmed she broke the fourth wall, as she drew a complete knockoff of the show, twisting only the details of Masamune's sore split with Aki and ensuring ensuring they had a happy reunion. At the end of the manga was a letter from Muriel to Masamune, where she explained how much she had learnt and explained that she gunned for him to make the right moves with Aki. Later that day, at Mune's home, his sister Chinatsu had seen a weird figure in her room, causing her to run in. She immediately dropkicked Masamune, accusing him of looking at her forbidden lore and expressing his sock addiction with her property. While they argued the truth or falsehood of the accusations, their mother appeared, informing them that she had done the laundry, proving Masamune's innocence. After a little squabble, Masamune reflected on the content of the manuscript before handing it over to Chinatsu, who asked to read it as well. Meanwhile, at the diner, Kanetsugu, Aki, and 3 of her friends hung out as they looked at pictures Aki took while in France. While the girls talked about the difference in the trips they had, Kanetsugu reflected on a plan of his own. His sister was chronically ill, and after realizing his family had gone broke and could barely continue funding her ailment, he decided it would be best for him to marry into the rich family of the cruel princess. Suddenly, his reflection was interrupted by the girls, who accused him of being an incompetent cameraman and not getting enough good photos of Aki. After he explained that he was unable to due to Aki hanging out with Masamune, the girls turned their attention to Aki, asking her questions about her adventures with the narcissist. When Aki couldn't take it anymore, she crashed out, exclaiming that she didn't want to talk about the bum. Seizing his opportunity, Tsugu decided to take advantage of her frustration and try to turn Aki completely against Masamune so she could fall in love with him. After she left to clean up her face, the other 3 girls accused Kanetsugu of trying to do exactly what he was trying to do. However, he instantly denied the accusations, claiming he was only doing it to support Aki. When the girls calmed down, Kanetsugu had a quick flashback, remembering how he lied he was Masamune and got himself connected to Aki's family. He was determined to make the money any way he could, even if it meant completely running his fiance's family dry. After Aki got back, he successfully managed to soften her heart, giving him a shot at his goal of finally concluding their marriage. Meanwhile, Masamune had decided to test out the hypothesis he drew from Muriel's manga. He met up with Yoshino and told her about his assumptions, beginning to inquire into the truth of the day he was dumped. When he was done, he asked whether or not she was responsible for Aki rejecting him. After Yoshino faked by denying his accusation, she informed him that she was the one who rejected him, knocking Masamune off his feet. After hearing Yoshi's confession, Masamune was stuck in confusion, trying to understand what happened. Meanwhile, somewhere else in the city, Aki and Kanetsugu continued their date alone. The hideous fiancé had convinced Aki's 3 friends to allow him continue the date alone. Although they were all completely against it, he gaslighted them into believing Yoshino was colluding with Masamune. He appealed to their inability to think properly and convinced them to allow him go alone with her, while they would do to prevent Yoshino or Masamune from interacting with Aki. While walking with Aki, he continued to appeal to her weakness, serenading the cruel princess. After he had finally gotten her falling further for his fraudulent imitation of Masamune, he convinced her to follow him to the Ferris wheel in an amusement park. Back at Aki's house, Yoshino explained that she purposely rejected the relationship between Masamune and Aki because she despised his hideous look. After contracting her sickness as a child, Yoshino was informed that she'd no longer be able to hang out with Aki at the time, so she'd be confined to her room indefinitely. For days, she simply enjoyed not having to work for her snotty master, until eventually she started to feel bored, wondering if Aki was also as idle as her. While she pondered about how important an entertainment source she was to Aki, she was hit with a reality check as she heard noise coming from outside her window. Aki had found a new friend, who was definitely a cholesterol ambassador. Yoshino assumed the kid was just a big rolling play toy Aki used to kill time in her absence. However, she was surprised to see Masamune having fun as well, something that rarely happened whenever it was just her and Aki. She instantly became jealous, upset that Aki was having more fun with a random kid who was definitely falling in love with her. A few days later, Yoshino had fully recovered, but in turn, Aki had fallen sick, causing extra in the already heated house. Although she was at her lowest due to the ongoing conflict and sickness, Aki found peace in the relationship she had with Masamune, assuring Yoshino that she had him. After hearing Aki say that, Yoshino exceeded her breaking point and realized she was nothing more than a walking toy for the cruel princess. Suddenly, she began hearing shouts for help from Aki. However, the girl had fallen asleep. After confirming the voice was Masamune, Yoshino decided to get rid of the big bug once and for all, as she presented herself as Aki and turned down Masamune, saying she wanted nothing to do with an aimless junkie. After the events of that night, Aki was broken by the disappearance of Makabe, causing her to hate all boys like a feminist. Because it had affected Aki so greatly, Yoshino attempted to look for Makabe to bring him back. However, the double beef layered kid was long gone, nowhere to be seen again, until he miraculously appeared several years later, looking like he had undergone training with an off-screen Batman. When Masamune asked if instantly recognized him, the maid confirmed it, claiming Aki would as well if she wasn't still hung up on the bad memories she had, along with the interference of Kanetsugu, who had stolen his identity. After Yoshino clarified that she wasn't intending for Masamune to eventually cut it off with Aki, she grabbed his arm and pleaded with him to save Aki from the overgrown weirdo who was trying to go after the cruel princess's heart. Immediately, Masamune took to his heels and ran to the amusement park, where Yoshino confirmed to be Aki's last location. At the park, Kanetsugu continued to woo Aki, taking her on a Ferris wheel whilst remembering his primary ambition. He was already receiving little funding from Aki's family as a fiancé. However, he needed more and could only get it by making Aki request it from her dad herself. A few moments later, Masamune Masamune arrived at the park, ready to fight for his love like Romeo did for Juliet. He was intercepted by the Goofy Three who anticipated Yoshino would come, rather than Masamune. When they attempted to halt him, Masamune warned them of the danger they had exposed Aki to, as Kanetsugu was a fraudulent liar, causing the girls to hesitate. With their guards down, Masamune confronted the girls and convinced them to give him a clearer picture on where Aki was. In the park, the pair had come down from the wheel and were about to have ice cream, a clever idea Kanetsugu got from the Paris-like atmosphere. After they sat down to talk, Kanetsugu continued his sweet talking, skipping Aki's composure further. However, before he could make his request to the love-struck tsundere, he was immediately graced with a Superman punch, launching him off the bench. Masamune had caught up to the plot and openly accused Kanetsugu of being a liar, before awkwardly asking Aki out in the most cringe way possible. Without wasting time, Kanetsugu struck back, hitting it to the ground. He attempted to frame Masamune as the popular rich boy antagonist of the story. However, Masamune denied his accusations, explaining that he used to be a cholesterol ambassador as well and was helplessly useless till he was saved by Aki. His touching story appealed to the cruel princess, who had begun to feel a spark between them, forcing Kanetsugu to try another act. However, his plan would be utterly demolished by the exposure of a dirty secret. After taking the punch from Masamune, Kanetsugu's shirt opened up a bit, giving a glimpse of a 2x-chest attribute, which was abnormal for boys. The jig was up, exposing a gender bender trope as Tsugu was revealed to be a girl. After she ran away ashamed, the other two were left to reflect on the other exposed truth, which was that Masamune was the Makabe Aki knew from her past. Although the atmosphere was stiff, Masamune teased Aki by trolling her for falling into the hands of his Walmart alt. When he continued to troll by emphasizing on the fact that Kanetsugu had extra plot up front and she didn't know throughout their relationship, Aki decided to take a jab of her own, reminding Masamune that he confessed to her. They began to drag the topic of his confession, going back and forth about how cringe it was. However, Aki eventually let go and instead accepted his relationship proposal, making them a couple. Later that night at the hospital, Kanetsugu visited her sister, who inquired into why she had a dent on her mouth. The elder sister explained that she got into an unnecessary squabble, causing a random psychopath to lunge a punch at her. After telling her sister exaggerated lies, Kanetsugu laughed, pleased that she no longer needed to put on with hiding her cannons and strips. The next day, Masamune was still mentally at the night before, as he had successfully gotten into a relationship with Aki. Because he was lost in thought, he didn't notice that his sister Chinatsu had come to tell him dinner was ready. After being unable to get to her brother who was in Cloud 9, Chinatsu let out a loud yell, finally getting Masamune's attention, however causing him to slip on his treadmill and crash on the floor. When Chinatsu tried to confirm if he was okay, Masamune had gone back into his trance, convincing his sister that he had multiple screws loose. The next day at school, Masamune was approached by yet another random junior who confessed to him. He thought he would be over with it after nicely turning her down. However, the girl oozed complete despairacy as she proposed Masamune took her as a second lover, after confirming he was in a relationship with the cruel princess. When she continued to show further signs of mental withdrawal, Masamune handed her a water bottle of his, asking her to imagine it was him. He immediately fled the scene, hoping the loony would leave him, and to his pleasure, the water bottle did the trick. After getting to the lockers, Masamune expressed his frustration at how frequently girls were approaching him. Fujin, who was nearby at the time, informed him that it was his fault for forming a super couple out of the blue. She reminded him that the girls who didn't approach him were probably just crying at home, keeping their regrets to themselves. When Masamune almost asked Fujin why the issue was her, he remembered she was a losing heroine who he had rejected the season before. Later that day in class, Masamune couldn't stop thinking about his new relationship. When he began to consider the possibility that it would be all peaches and roses, he received a message from Aki demanding he brought her bread for lunch. After a horrendous lunch rush, Masamune began to consider whether or not he had gotten himself involved with a girl or had put himself in a serious problem. After she continuously sent him messages demanding food and threatening him with the possibility of herself shriveling, Masamune decided to dive into the ruckus. However, he was in for a big surprise when he got to the lunch lady. While normal rom-coms had hideous lunch ladies or lunch ladies the characters assumed to be an alien, Masamune had pulled the short straw as his new lunch lady was Kanetsugu, his discount store wannabe. They decided to go to a secluded area where Kanetsugu told Masamune about how she sold her mansion to foot her sister's bills, and reached out to the school for help, leading to her job as the lunch lady. She explained that although it seemed bad from a third-party POV, she was happier living in an apartment than trying to uphold her mid-family's name. After getting that out of the way, Tsugu decided to play with Masamune's inexperience, reminding him that since he came from a rich family, she'd be a front-runner to marry him. And after he played perfectly into her expectations, she laughed it off and congratulated him on making it work with Aki. When Masamune got to the shed where Aki hid her disgusting feeding habits, he saw her struggling with something behind some equipment. Wondering what it was, he came closer and offered to help, causing the inexperienced Aki Aki to blush. He saw she was attempting to bring out a stove, and after helping her get it out, he asked her what she intended for it. She explained that if it was functional, she would use it in the shed, making Masamune laugh as his girlfriend had completely accepted her fate as a black hole for food. After teasing her, he handed over the stuff he brought, pleasing Aki, who was super hungry as always. After thanking him for his help, she offered to treat him to one of her croquette buns. When Masamune rejected her offer, Aki demanded that he eat something, claiming he was getting too skinny. Masamune reminded her that he got skinny for her, causing Aki to blush. And when she asked him how she could reward him, Masamune grabbed her by the face, telling her the sentiment was enough. Just then, Yoshino arrived with the kerosene she was asked to fetch, causing Masamune to panic and run away. After he had rested on a bench for a while, he wondered why he had done something so awfully corny. It was enough to cause secondhand embarrassment. As he pondered on the progression of his newly found relationship, he noticed an outbreak of hives on his arm. He immediately covered up after noticing who was walking by and asked to talk to her. They went to a nearby playground where Aki and Yo hung out as kids. After teasing Masamune till he fell and getting it out of her system, Yo asked Masamune why he decided not to tell Aki about her involvement in their first split. Masamune decided to play the cool guy act, telling Yo that he didn't see the need to do it. After thanking Masamune for keeping shut, Yo prepared to leave. However, his composure couldn't last much longer, as he immediately fell to his knees, begging Yo to help him boost his relationship with Aki. Yoshino decided to assist him and informed him that Aki's birthday was on Christmas Eve, coming later that month, so she'd be pleased if he properly planned an outing and took her out. After telling him what he needed to do, Yoshino informed Masamune that she would no longer be having any contact with him, as her role in his earlier plan had come to an end. Although he wasn't too happy with her decision, Masamune decided to respect it, acknowledging that a random rendezvous with his partner's maid would spawn unnecessary rumors. The next day, Masamune joined Aki and Yo in the shed where he played a guessing game. He pretended not to know Aki's birthday, however. She was too jumpy and ruined her chances of a surprise by telling him it was on the 24th of the month. Masamune decided to change courses and asked her on a date to celebrate the day, and Aki, being a tsundere, struggled to give Masamune a clear answer. However, after remembering her expressions whenever she agreed with something as a child, Masamune assumed she was okay with it. He attempted to celebrate by throwing Yo a thumbs up, but the maid completely aired his gesture, reminding him of their agreement. Later that day, Masamune struggled to think of where to go on Christmas Eve, so he decided to ask his younger sister, Chinatsu. He immediately regretted his decision, as Chinatsu was an otaku just like him, causing her to have delusional tendencies, like asking for dates at a castle. Eventually, their mom got involved, causing the discussion to become a contest of delusions, asking Masamune to do the impossible. When he had enough, Masamune got up and left, ignoring what seemed to be important information that Chinatsu attempted to tell him. After getting to his room, Masamune decided to think backwards as he picked up his mangas and chose to get his date idea from them, the exact same source of media that had his mom and sister arguing over castles and unicorns downstairs. He read different volumes of mangas, but was unable to get any decent ideas on what to do and where to go. Meanwhile, at her house, Aki decided to change her title to Indecisive Princess, as she struggled to select what she'd wear, to the displeasure of Yoshino. The next day at school, Masamune sought ideas from Shuri on where to go on Christmas Eve. Shuri proved to be his solution, as she introduced him to nice restaurants and places, finally giving Masamune a direction on where he was heading. Over the next few days, Masamune planned what he thought to be the perfect date, whilst the indecisive princess tried to get her fit together. On D-Day, Masamune and Aki met at the front of a mall, where they'd started their date. She had finally decided what to wear, and Masamune, who had no idea it took her a week to choose, forgot to compliment her, causing her to playfully hit him. After going in, Aki asked Masamune what they'd be doing on their date, which he explained would start off at the cinema. When they got to the seats, Masamune remembered Aki insisted there was a 5-seat gap between them, however. This she sat down beside him, showing how much closer they had gotten. While the movie was on, Masamune could barely watch it, as the movie was incredibly sappy and corny, but his date Aki was fully immersed in the movie, causing him to smile. Meanwhile, at Aki's house, Yoshino was lost in thought, cleaning up the house, as there was no burden from Aki to bear. Her sister, a fellow maid, joined her, asking why she lacked Christmas spirit, which she explained to be her nature as a servant. Her sister agreed and handed her a package, asking her to put a smile on her face. Yoshino took a look at the package and immediately realized she had almost been gaslighted into believing she got a gift. Back at the cinema, Aki was in tears after the movie, claiming it moved her heart. Masamune, on the other hand, couldn't be bothered, as he was happy to get away from the sappy movie. When Aki asked what their next move was, Masamune told her of a cafe recommended to him which he was sure she'd love. In a shocking twist, when they got to the location he was given, the pair couldn't tell if they were at a cafe or crime scene. Eventually, they discovered from gossiping passersby that the cafe caught fire, crashing a huge meteor into Masamune's plans. They went around town searching for an open, decent cafe they could use as an alternative. However, they were all either full or sold out. In the evening, Aki was ready to give up, but Masamune would have none of that, as he had planned planned and researched for Christmas Eve. Feeling he was out of options, Masamune decided to invite Aki to his house, where he anticipated something nice would be cooking. When they got to the doorstep, Masamune prayed his family wouldn't embarrass him as they did previous times before. However, when they got in, Masamune discovered the house was dark and seemingly empty. He got to the center table and saw a note from his sister, informing him that she had gone with their mother to a resort while their dad was on a business trip. Masamune realized he had messed up, as Aki saw the note as well, making it clear to both that they were the only ones in his home. Meanwhile, somewhere in France, Muriel and her brother Frank had lunch on Christmas Eve. After Frank appreciated the view of his sister's pirate-like face, she handed him a gift. The French otaku had drawn a face shot of her brother's face. When the French mafia boss asked what he could do for her in return, Muriel gave him a list of Japanese events where he could help her get susmangas, which he awkwardly accepted to do. Back in Japan, Masamune and Aki struggled to compose themselves, as they were both completely oblivious to the happenings of a proper couple alone at home. Aki decided to take charge and reminded Masamune she simply came for tea, meaning there was no need for any complications even though they were alone. After getting the green light from Aki, Masamune allowed her to remain in his house, as he proceeded to the kitchen to get the tea. However, he was so clueless in the affairs of the kitchen that he had no idea where the tea was, forcing Aki to continue her lead and join him in the kitchen so she could search for it with him. While looking, Aki reminded Masamune they also intended on getting pancakes. With Masamune agreeing, Aki took the pancake dough she found and suggested they make it themselves. The pair wore their aprons and began preparing their pancakes. However, both were very awful chefs, causing them to waste time and ingredients, as they could barely flip the batter in the pan. Eventually, they succeeded in making it and settled for canned cocoa as they couldn't find any tea. While they ate, Masamune decided to test the waters and offered Aki pancakes from his share. Although she was cringed out by the disgusting face he was making, Aki grabbed his hand and allowed him to feed her before taking a jab of her own by pouring syrup all over his pancakes. When Masamune complained it was too much, Aki told him it was suitable for him, causing Masamune to trip up, as he believed she was ignorantly still thinking of the cholesterol ambassador he was as a child. When she got up to go get ice cream, he grabbed her arm and led her to his room, where he showed her his entire workout equipment, hoping she understood how dedicated he was to building his body. However, she was more captured by a picture he had in his room of them as kids, confirming to her that he cared about those memories, almost allowing her cuteness get him away from his point. Masamune grabbed Aki's shoulders and made it clear to her that the point of him taking her there was to see how hard he worked to stop being a quadruple beef patty. He explained that her constant attempts to make him eat calories were an insult to his bodybuilding arc, and asked her if she appreciated what he had become. However, before she could answer, the excess amount of corniness from his question caused her to lose balance as they both came crashing down. Suddenly, Masamune began to have stomach aches, forcing him to rush over to the toilet as Aki was lost in the moment. When she got back down to the living room, she received a message from Masamune informing her he was fine, but cutting short their date, as he was now out of action. He wished her happy birthday and informed her of a gift in his coat pocket, which she took before accidentally laying her eyes on what looked to be his diary. After she left, Masamune wondered why he had suddenly gotten hives again, along with the abnormal stomachache. He began to wonder if it was caused by touching Aki, which was when it started the first time. Aki, on the other hand, returned to her home where she met up with the strangely dressed No, who asked about her date. After giving a vague reply and asking a question about her appeal, which she already knew the answer to, she returned to her room, where she opened Masamune's gift. She appreciated the thought he put into getting a necklace of her former dogs, bringing back old memories. However, her mind couldn't get over the writing in Masamune's journal, talking about getting revenge on a woman. Some days later, after New Year's, Masamune visited a doctor who told him his hives were most likely as a result of stress. He was advised to check in later that week if any issues persisted. While walking from the hospital, Masamune thought about his relationship with Aki and how it could have caused the hives. Eventually, he got to the front of a cafe where he questioned whether or not he needed to go in to have a bite. In the cafe, Futaba and Shuri were having a conversation about their holiday as the class rep let out her frustration. She was stuck on babysitting duty throughout, with kids who she thought were trying very hard to get back at her for a crime she committed in a previous life. When she asked Shuri how her holiday went, her friend explained that she spent it in front of her television throughout, binging Netflix shows till she was either hungry or sleepy. After remembering they hadn't gone on a group outing in a while, Futaba decided they would go for the first shrine visit of the year together. Just then, Shuri noticed a familiar narcissistic face outside, walking away from their direction. Une, who considered stopping at the cafe, chose not to. However, after receiving a message from Futaba, he looked back and saw two of his close friends waving at him from inside the window. Meanwhile, at her home, Aki was lost in thought, thinking about the events that unfolded on Christmas Eve. She wondered what the details of Masamune's revenge were, and why he acted so weirdly before she left. Just then, she was snapped out of her thought process by Yo, who informed her the show she was watching had ended. When Yo asked if she had any plans for the day, Aki told her she didn't, owing to her snotty, introverted attitude. Back at the cafe, Masamune met up with Futaba and Shuri, who told him about their shrine visit plan. They asked if he could invite Aki and Yoshino, but after remembering his hive, Masamune made excuses claiming that Aki and Yo were busy, so they would be unlikely to come with them. At her home, Fujin looked through old pictures she had of her and an extra-large friend. They reminded her of the first time she met him at a wedding. Although she was shy, Masamune tried his best to make friends with Fujinomiya, offering her food in an attempt to get her to open up. After receiving the shrine invite from her friends, she immediately decided to join them. Fujinomiya arrived at the venue. The group began their outing, transitioning from praying to taking drinks and going sightseeing. Eventually, they resorted to playing a game called Hanetsuki, where they'd fire a shuttlecock at each other till it hit the body of an opponent, allowing the victor to draw on their face. After confirming Fuji could play without facing a health hazard, the group began, firing back and forth and painting each other's faces till they all looked like graffiti walls. After the game, they had tea and went their separate ways, happy that they had their fun. While leaving, Masamune realized his hives had completely gone, making him further suspicious about the cause. The next day, they resumed school, making it more awkward for Masamune as he had not seen Aki since the Christmas Eve incident. While he was walking through the halls, he came across Yoshino. However, following the agreement they had, he could only stare and walk past to the surprise of Fujinomiya, who was stalking him from afar. The next weekend, Fujinomiya completed her regular checkup at the hospital, and on her way home, she came across Masamune, who she decided to give a ride to so they could talk. He followed her home and was entertained with some tea by Fujinomiya's assistant. She gave him a nasty look, warning him not to try any funny business with Fujinomiya, as she would make sure to show him a world of pain if he did. When Fujin got back with snacks she planned to offer Masamune, Shido left, allowing her master and guest to converse freely. Fujinomiya loosely asked Masamune a question about stress, hoping she'd get an idea of what he meant. He told her that he had let go of his date and dump plan. However, he was worried he might have been reacting negatively because he didn't say the entire truth to Aki. Fujinomiya took a sip of her tea and told him she believed it was unlikely. However, it would be more possible that his system reacted negatively to not having a secret anymore. Fujinomiya had managed to confuse not just Masamune, but the writers as well, so she decided to explain by telling Mune he missed wanting to have revenge on Aki. She insisted that he didn't actually love Aki, which was the reason for his reaction. She then tried to remind him that she had met him before he knew Aki. However, Masamune was completely unfamiliar with what she said. He immediately apologized for his shitty memory, as Shido, who was in the distance, had been charging up like a Super Saiyan god, waiting for him to slip up. Fujinomiya continued, reminding Masamune that he told her the exact same thing after she confessed, giving her a better understanding. She then proceeded to completely blast the matter out of proportion from Masamune expressing his relationship issues to an unprecedented kissing scene, claiming she was now in love with him. Although he was in a relationship, Masamune had completely lost the plot and allowed Fujin to get the better of him, being a few nanoseconds away from a second kiss. However, Shido would step in just in time to prevent her master from kissing the useless boyfriend. Just then, Masamune and Fujinomiya discovered further signs of hives on his arm. The latter immediately retired for the day, bidding Masamune goodbye as she returned to her room while he left. Later that day, Masamune received a message from Aki asking about how his hospital checkup was. Masamune struggled to reply as he wondered if his emotions were true, causing him to scream out from the top of a pedestrian bridge. Suddenly, someone down below fell, causing Masamune to panic as he believed he was responsible. And in a shocking twist, Masamune would be astonished to realize it was none other than Yo, who had tripped on the ground. At her mansion, Aki's black hole had powered up, making her hungry. She called out for Yoshino, who gave no response, forcing her to get up and look around for her aid. After searching for a while, Aki went to the balcony where she saw Yoshino's older sister. After asking her where she could find Yoshino, Aki was told her maid had gone shopping, causing her to plan a sweets date with her 3 goofy friends. Meanwhile, at the scene of the accident, Masamune approached the fallen Yo, asking her if she was doing fine. When she attempted to walk away as a sign of confirmation, she realized that her ankle had twisted, temporarily making her helpless. Masamune attempted to assist her, carrying her like a helpless bride. However, she immediately threw him a punch, embarrassed by the scene. When Masamune asked her how she planned on continuing, Yoshino attempted to rise up once again. However, she could only constantly fall, forcing her to plead with Masamune for a piggyback ride. At a sweets shop somewhere else, the Goof Squad had tea, wondering if Aki would blow off another date with them just like she had done many times before. They began to discuss what they believed to be rumors of Aki and Mune dating, as it could be the reason for her sudden tendency to ignore them. They then decided that they would ask Aki the big question on whether or not she was dating Masamune, causing a back and forth argument about who would pull out the question. Suddenly, Aki appeared, causing the girls to feel nervous from all her rich girl aura. On the other side of town, Masamune gave Yoshino a piggyback ride across town, awkwardly receiving stares from neutrals whilst having to deal with the pressure of Yoshino's 2x chess stats. He knew that if he spoke, he'd be in for the worst of the maid, so he kept his degenerate thoughts to himself. Just then, Yoshino called out his name, causing him to panic as he thought she had realized what was happening. However, she was more concerned with a completely different issue, which was that she had worn a skirt, making her uncomfortable. They decided to stop at a nearby park, where she'd rest so she could continue again. At the cafe, their table was engulfed in a stiff atmosphere, as although Aki was comfortably stuffing her face with sweets, the goofy friends struggled to determine which of them would pop the question. After complete failures from all 3, the shortest of them finally exploded, asking Aki whether she was in a relationship with a narcissist. Cruel Princess confirmed it, blushing as she told her friends the truth. Although they were very upset, the Goofs were very happy with Aki's lovey-dovey face, causing them to accept the relationship and move on. Meanwhile, at the park, Yoshino patted her leg as she could feel the severity of the bruise she had incurred. Masamune, who had been assisting her, attempted to check it out. However, she told him off, causing him to sit on the nearby bench. When the silence was becoming unbearable, Yoshino decided to bring up the topic of the Christmas Eve date. Because Mune didn't want to talk about it, he told off the incident as a simple planning error, an excuse Yoshino took to be pure waffle. She began to pinch his cheek for disappointing Aki, causing Mune to come to a realization. He grabbed different parts of Yoshino's arms before giving her a hug and letting out words implying a confession. After hearing Masamune let out his cringe words, Yoshino gave him a big headbutt, knocking him out. Meanwhile, Aki, who had finished her date with the goofy friends, was approached by Kanetsugu on her way home. When Masamune regained consciousness, he realized Yoshino had taken a hike, leaving a message on his face before she left. Later that day, at a restaurant, Kanetsugu and Aki talked about how badly they had resolved their issue, as they hadn't seen each other since she stole Masamune's identity. Aki assured Tsugu that she didn't hold a grudge, but instead was happy with the way she was now living. She praised Tsugu for living with a solid resolve and called herself an irredeemable jobber, as she had no definite goal of her own. Kanetsugu immediately butt, claiming it was not the case. However, she simply needed a way to express her emotions herself, the same way she did using her love for her sister. While walking back home, Aki pondered on the words of her fellow Big Mac enthusiast, wondering how she could properly accept her own feelings. After getting home, she met with Yo, who was fiddling with the first aid box. After demanding Yoshino tell her why she needed it, she discovered that her best pal had sprained her ankle, making her require medical attention. After Yoshino pleaded, she kept the information coded due to a fear of needles. Aki decided to help Yoshino out herself, applying medicinal balm and a bandage. After seeing Aki's show of kindness, Yoshino began to cry, wondering if she was a traitorous witch who betrayed her master. Deep in the night, Masamune would be disturbed by a mysterious dream, showing him an alternate reality where his true heroine was Yoshino. The next morning, Masamune was completely confused by his dream, wondering what it meant and why he had it. When he got into the class, he was hit with an aura similar to the one dominant in France, indicating it would soon be the period of love. His friends Shuri and Futaba were completely absorbing the mood, talking about how much they expected from the holiday and how they anticipated it to be a great success. When Masamune doubted it'd be that big for him, Futaba teased him by reminding him he'd received chocolate from Aki. The Aki in question, however, was more invested in the quality of her chocolate run on Valentine's Day, testing different types of chocolates from her family's company. When she was done with the taste test, Aki pretended to Yoshino that she didn't remember Valentine existed. However, she was hit with a reality check, as Yoshino reminded her that she would need to get Masamune a gift. When Aki asked what she needed to do, Yoshino gave her the option of chocolate, which Aki decided she'd do on her own. She began to learn how they were made and went on a training arc with Yoshino. Over the next 2 weeks, Masamune's friends planned their Valentines, and Aki perfected the art of chocolate making, as she was incredibly awful in the kitchen, making her need more time than others to learn. At his home, Masamune was fighting a constant calorie battle, doing everything in his power to avoid the chocolates and sweets his sister and mother offered him. The 13th of the month, Aki had successfully made chocolate, impressing her teacher Yoshino, who rejected Aki's offer that she should try the chocolate. After Aki asked Yoshino if she had a special person she wanted to give chocolates to, the maid denied having any weak links, meaning she only needed to hand out obligatory chocolate. On Valentine's Day, their class was buzzing with activity, as the boys were gifted chocolates from all the girls due to a school rule that made them mandatory. Shuri decided to make a solo move of his own by gifting Fujinomiya some chocolate in private. However, they'd lose the element of privacy as Aki and Yoshino walked by, interrupting their little lovey-dovey moment. Fujinomiya was unmoved, as she decided to flex her chocolate, using it as an excuse to ask Aki whether or not she'd be giving Masamune. After hearing the question, Aki blushed, conceding that she intended on giving Masamune chocolate since it was her role. Masamune, on the other hand, was approached by yet another girl, this time the lunatic who attempted to have him 2 times, offering him chocolate. She handed over her gift and presented the bottle Masamune gave her from their earlier encounter, assuring him she was still fully interested in being his second option, creeping Masamune out. After she left, he added the chocolate to the haul he had already accumulated, before receiving a message from Aki, who invited him to the school shed. Masamune immediately rushed over and met Aki waiting in front of the structure. After seeing his chocolate stash, Aki was pissed, claiming there was no point in giving Mune, as it was unlikely he would eat it. However, Masamune refused, declaring that he wanted her chocolate more than anything else at that moment. When Aki handed it over, Mune immediately opened it and took a bite, surprising Aki, who thought he would decide not to because of his calorie gains. From that moment on, Mune decided it would be best for him to change his ways so he could get the best out of his relationship with Aki. The next day, they decided to go on a date with a twist, as they would be visiting multiple of Aki's favorite diners and restaurants. They started off with a brunch shop, where Aki ate like her usual monstrous self, while Masamune, who would usually stick only to veggies and salads, followed suit. He was keeping to his word, and was no longer scared of becoming his extra large self. After Aki ordered more food to quench her active black hole, Una decided it was best to copy, as corny moments like that wouldn't last forever. Back at Masamune's home, his sister and mother discussed how much he had changed due to his girlfriend. After realizing that the reason her son now ate more of her for food was probably a girlfriend, his mother and sister grew desperate to know her. Later that day, Masamune and Aki burger shop, where although Aki told him not to, he ignored and made an order similar to hers, causing him to almost constipate. When he tried to exercise quickly so as to create space in his stomach to continue the date, Masamune ended up stirring his stomach and hurling in the ocean. At the end of the date, Masamune appreciated Aki and promised her more lunch rush dates of that nature. The next week at school, Yoshino was caught having lunch alone by Fujinomiya, who decided to join her. Although they weren't close, Fujinomiya tried to appeal to Yoshino by bringing up the topic of a relationship with Masamune. After hearing Fujinomiya unnecessarily bring up the topic of Masamune's relationship, Yoshino wondered what the girl beside her was planning. Meanwhile, in the shed, Masamune and Aki talked over chicken as they discussed possible locations they could go to while on their next date. After finishing their meal, they heard the bell ring next period, forcing them to run as they would be late otherwise. While exiting, Masamune slipped, causing Aki to worry. However, he was unable to allow her to grab up his hand due to a fear of the appearance of hives. He immediately performed a Chinese getup, assured Aki he was okay, and then continued his run to class, a scene Fujinomiya, his classmate, had seen. Later that day, after school, Fujinomiya was lost in thought, staring out the window before being dragged back to reality by Masamune, who handed over a notebook she left behind. When she asked him why he wasn't with Aki, Masamune informed her that Aki had other business to attend to, leaving him free to exercise for the rest of his evening. Fujinomiya then proceeded to bring up the topic of his hives, which Masamune assured her was over. They said their farewells and Masamune left the school area. Later that evening, Aki walked around the school compound with her umbrella, navigating under the snow, while Shuri, who was on class duty, struggled to get around school because it was dark. Eventually, Aki got to a classroom where she met Fujinomiya, who immediately got down to business. She confronted Aki and demanded she break up with Masamune, claiming it was for the best. However, Aki refused, saying she wouldn't do that simply because she was asked to. When Fujinomiya claimed that Masamune was not in love with Aki, the latter admitted that she knew, especially after reading his planner, which had the date and dump plan. She began to tear up, explaining to Fujinomiya that her love for Masamune was enough to keep her in the relationship, and she had no issue if he decided to put into use his weird plan, because she loved him. When Fujinomiya expressed confusion at his burning love, Aki made it clear to her that she fully understood the pain of a third party seeking to shorten the span of the relationship. After leaving the classroom, Aki joined Yoshino at the school entrance and told her about the encounter with Fujinomiya. When Yoshino attempted to confront Masamune's classmate, Aki held her back, expressing her displeasure for unnecessary trouble. She admitted to Yoshino that she knew Masamune didn't truly love her, and she was simply holding on to a relationship she knew was toxic. Yoshino immediately refused to accept Aki's words, confessing her plot to get rid of Masamune as a child and how they were able to sort it out. She tearily admitted her fault and assured Aki that Masamune did love her and was aware she wasn't responsible for their awkward split as children. Expecting Aki to crash out a bit after hearing her, Yoshino was surprised to see her master smile while keeping her under her umbrella to protect her from the cold. She assured Yoshino she wasn't upset with her. However, she had a special assignment she required Yoshino's help with. The next morning, Masamune woke up after sleeping like a baby, unaware that a very important part of his love life had taken a hit the day before. He looked down at the heap of snow in his compound, as his sister Chinatsu challenged him to a snowman building competition. When he refused to indulge her game, Chinatsu called her brother and UNC, forcing him to accept her challenge and beat the allegations. Before long, they completed their snowman, which looked like a creepy ritual doll. Although it was hideous, Masamune was proud of his work, taking a picture of it and sending it to Aki, hoping he'd receive some praise. After seeing Masamune send the picture to his girlfriend, Chinatsu asked Masamune if he could bring her over for dinner sometime, as she and their mom wanted to meet the mysterious life changer. After considering the proposal, Masamune assured Chinatsu that he'd bring Aki over eventually, not wanting to rush anything. Later that day at school, the girls began discussing plans for White Day as they anticipated loads of gifts from the guys they gave chocolates. The boys in class were exasperated as they were only given chocolates because of a mandatory rule in school. Shuri, who was seated peacefully in class, had been completely mind-blown by the events that took place after school the day before. He asked Fujin why she did what she did, and the latter responded that she did it to protect Masamune. She accepted her role as not just the third edge of a sappy love triangle, but as the main antagonist for the couple. Later that day during lunch, Yoshino tried her best to complete the assignment Aki gave her. While she was aiming to complete it, she was approached by Fujinomiya, forcing her to immediately leave the area. Meanwhile, at the shed, Masamune and Aki hung out, this time with Aki only eating a normal portion of food. Although Masamune wanted to ask Aki to follow him home so she could meet his family, he was too much of a chicken, scared that his family would embarrass him. Out of the blue, Aki decided to invite him on a date, ruining his chances of taking her home that day to meet his family. After school, Fujinomiya was once again approached by Shuri, who asked to walk home with her. For some reason, they wouldn't stop talking about Fujinomiya, almost ruining Aki's relationship. After a small back and forth, Shuri assured Fujinomiya he would never see her differently, after Fujinomiya tried to convince him she was an antagonist. Later that day, Masamune got a call from Aki, confirming their date. She told him that it wouldn't be to a restaurant like they did constantly before, as she intended for them to go shopping together. She also reminded him about White Day, a celebration Masamune panicked over as he had no gift for Aki and didn't know what to do. After Aki ended the call, he met up with the delusional duo he was living with, and just as anticipated, Chinatsu was unable to give a feasible answer. However, his mom would prove different this time, asking him to bake Aki something just like she did for him on Valentine's Day. Masamune appreciated the idea and chose to make macarons as they were Aki's favorite snack. However, just as his mum warned him, they were difficult to make, as every attempt he made ended up either looking like a dead rodent or a turd. He eventually settled to buy macarons rather than make them himself. He asked for help from Shuri, who was the biggest sweets fan he knew, to help him get to the best sweet store around, which Shuri did. After searching for a while, he finally got the right type of snack he intended to gift Aragaki for White Day. After noticing Shuri got a White Day gift for someone as well, Masamune asked about the receiver, who Shuri explained to be Fujinomiya. He then praised Shuri for his thoughtfulness before inviting him out for dinner since it was late. Next day, Aki had finished preparing and left her house for the date, bidding Yoshino and her sister goodbyes. After Aki left, Yoshino's sister reminded her that she was young as well, so she needed to take advantage of her youth too. Before long, Masamune arrived at the store Aki told him about and wondered if he had the right location. After seeing Aki come in, his mind finally settled down, confirming he was at the right place. When Masamune asked what she intended to buy, Aki went over to the attendant and asked whether he remembered her, causing confusion for both the attendant and Masamune. She informed him that she was from the mansion he used to play not too far from, instantly giving the attendant an idea of who she was. While Masamune was still confused, she grabbed him and introduced him as well, telling the attendant he was the cholesterol ambassador he and his friends bullied so much as a child, completely shocking the attendant. After telling the attendant who they were, Aki decided it was time to leave as the attendant was also being called by his manager. Before Masamune left, his former teaser apologized for his wrongdoings as a child, most likely because he was scared the ripped Masamune could hurt him. After leaving the store, Masamune and Aki talked, as she asked him how he felt after meeting his former oppressor. After Masamune told her he was completely fine and unmoved, Aki asked whether to visit the other bums, which Masamune rejected, making his girlfriend proud. After getting through a sappy compliment scene and crying about how much he loved his girlfriend, Masamune presented his White Day gift to her, which Aki gracefully accepted. After smiling at the gift for a few seconds to build momentum, Aki twisted the entire day on its head as she returned the package to Masamune and bid him farewell. In the most surprising turn of events, Masamune had been hit with a breakup scene. A few days later at school, Masamune's friends were surprised to have not seen him for 3 days. They wondered what could have possibly happened to him, as he wasn't responding to any of their messages or calls. It was no help to them that even the teacher was completely unaware of why he refused to come to school, making his 3-day absence a problem for his record. Just then, Futaba saw Aki and Yoshino walk past, causing her and her friends to rush towards them, hoping for an answer. When they caught up to Aki, they asked her why Masamune hadn't been going to school. However, Aki was confused as well, completely aware that he didn't. After the topic of their relationship was brought up, Aki informed them that they were no longer a thing, as she broke it off days ago, surprising Yoshino, who was left out of the loop. When Yoshino asked why it was so, Aki refused to answer, claiming it was none of her business as she walked away. After Aki left, Yoshino decided to head over to his place after school, with Futaba and her friends agreeing to come since they were all equally worried. When they got to his house, Futaba and Shuri were amazed by how majestic it was, as they had never visited before. Yoshino and Fujinomiya asked the other two to brace themselves, as the house was extremely awkward. However, after ringing the doorbell multiple times, there was no reply. The group thought there was no one at home, given they didn't see any lights on. However, upon smelling the pudding her brother's friends had brought, Chinatsu rushed out, scaring Shuri to the ground. Before long, the 4 students were allowed in, and Chinatsu had started digging into the pudding. After seeing the abnormal amount of unwashed dishes, Fujinomiya asked what had happened, which Chinatsu began to explain. She directed the friends to her brother's room, showing more scattered areas of the house in embarrassment. They got into Masamune's room. His friends were astonished by the amount of workout equipment and mirrors that were present. Chinatsu looked under his duvet and brought out their mum, who had gone from simply looking like a loli to actually becoming one. Chinatsu explained that Masamune had left the house to Shinshu, where his grandfather lived, without listening to his mother's plea that he should stay. Because he was gone, their mother began to bug out, making her ineffective in the house. After hearing the story, Yoshino wondered what could have happened after the date with Aki that led to Masamune fleeing from his home. Chinatsu thanked the group for the pudding before they left, as their mom used it to calm herself down. After they left, Shuri had work to catch up on, so he left the other 3 to contemplate what was going on with Masamune. When Fujinomiya continued to hammer on the possibility of what Aki did, Yoshino grabbed her arm and accused her of being responsible for it, as she got into Aki's head and had her confused about the relationship, leading to a breakup. Fujinomiya immediately gave Yoshino a cheap shot before crying, as she explained that Yoshino was the actual perpetrator. She accused Yoshino of forcing Aki on Masamune when she knew where his heart belonged, causing Masamune to get the hives. As Fujinomiya broke down, Aki appeared, asking Futaba to walk away with Fujinomiya so she could have a mano with Yoshino. In Shinshu, Masamune raked leaves and gathered them together before setting them alight and treating it like a bonfire. While he sat thinking about his failed relationship, he remembered going to Shinshu as a child but with hatred in his heart at the time. Just then, his grandfather appeared, asking him to refrain from bringing sweets as he held the package Masamune got for Aki. After the old man left, Masamune burnt the package and continued to reflect, wanting to know where his emotions lay. Back in the city, Aki and Yoshino had a conversation where they initially attempted to let them drop their status as master and servant so they could properly address their emotions. Aki explained that she was overly reliant on Yoshino, making her do unnecessary things as kids and sending her on extravagant errands. She admitted that the barrier in status had made her completely ignore Yoshino's emotions for Masamune, causing Yoshino to tear up. The maid denied the allegations, claiming she couldn't have feelings for a narcissistic bum like him. However, Aki assured her there was no need rejecting it, as she was in full support of their ship. She gave Yoshino the go-ahead to chase after Masamune, causing the two girls to tear up as Yoshino immediately took off. Meanwhile, at a karaoke bar somewhere else in the city, Fujinomiya, who had been taking her L as a losing heroine, was being comforted by Futaba, who assured her she'd be all right. After confirming that Fujinomiya was actually in love with Masamune, she gave her calming words of advice, explaining that a lady in love always had something in her heart, which made sense to both of them somehow. With Fujinomiya fully calmed down, Futaba got the karaoke pad and selected a song they'd sing together. At the city subway station, Yoshino rushed through the crowd with her bag, aiming to go to Shinshu as fast as she could. When she got on the train, she struggled to put up her bag, as it was too high for her. However, she would be helped by a fellow passenger who helped her get it up. The train rushed through different cities in Japan, carrying Yoshino on her journey to find her kryptonite. Although she was disappointed in her own case, it wasn't the other way around where Masamune would rush through Japan to get her. Yoshino solidified her will regardless. At the Shinshu house, Masamune had finished his chores and evening jog. When he stepped outside, he was overwhelmed by a nostalgic fog, which reminded him of his old self who completely hated Aki. After seeing an illusion of his obese young self fall, Masamune walked over and talked to it, telling the young lad Aki wasn't his enemy. He informed himself revenge wasn't the right way, and peace was the real deal, causing the fog to clear away. From a third-person perspective, Masamune looked like a lunatic. However, he was lucky the only third person nearby got there after he had ended his display. Yoshino, who had finally arrived at Shinshu, ran over to Masamune and leaped into his arms. Before he could ask the hows, whys, and give the buts, Masamune's lip was sealed with a kiss, opening a new chapter of his love story. A few days later, Masamune returned to the city, where he continued his regular exercises and continued to live with his weird family. Later that day, at Aki's house, Yoshino got dressed up and prepared to go out, living her life like her sister requested. After seeing Aki, who had granted her the liberty of going on dates at random, she awkwardly promised Aki to be back soon enough. Before long, Aki became incredibly hungry, making her regret not asking for a snack from Yoshino before she left. When she decided to take action herself, she saw the bag Yoshino returned with after heading over to Shinshu to fetch Masamune. Aki remembered that she was a bit distressed on that day, as Yoshino didn't come back early as expected. She grabbed the contents of the bag, microwaved them, then took some green tea with it, assuring herself that she didn't need Yoshino all the time before going to sleep. The next day, a new session of school had started as the students rushed to see what class they had been slotted in ahead of their final year. While checking, Futaba, Shuri, and Fujinomiya came across Kanetsugu, who had finally come back to school, but this time in the appropriate uniform, much to the confusion of Shuri, who still couldn't believe she was a she. After seeing Yoshino struggle to find her class, the group informed her that she was with them, meaning she would be in a class different from Aki's for the first time ever. The saying, "speak of the devil," probably popped up in their heads as they saw Aki confirm her class, however, in dismay, as she was in the same class as Masamune. Masamune joked about the coincidence, but Aki couldn't compute it, as she was still feeling awkward after the relationship saga. It was continuously uncomfortable for her, staying in the same class as the guy she dumped who ended up getting with her maid best friend. She ate her lunch alone in the shed once again, believing Yoshino was with Masamune. However, she was surprised to see the guy in question come into the shed bearing gifts of food. Even a tsundere like her couldn't keep up with the amount of mixed signals he had been giving her, forcing her to ask what he was doing. But before he could answer, Yoshino popped out of nowhere, pulling Masamune away from the shed. While Aki writhed in jealousy, Yoshino continued pulling Masamune away, telling him the time wasn't ripe yet. Later that day, Aki decided to reinvent herself, leading to a change in hairstyle. When Aki arrived home, she would have been greeted by Yoshino, but her change in hairstyle was so abrupt, her friend was completely lost for words. When Aki tried to explain that she was simply trying to convert herself from the snotty brat of the previous arcs, Yoshino called her a dummy, as she was playing a prank on her. When Aki asked what she meant, Yoshino asked her to head back to school where she'd uncover the whole truth. After getting to Shinshu, Yoshino realized that the only reason someone could stay there for a long period of time thinking about another person was true love. Although she still decided to express her feelings to Masamune, she knew the truth about his emotions and decided to pretend there was a plot twist. After getting to school, Aki saw a note similar to one she had written for Masamune previously. She began to search all over the school for him, promising him a talking to the moment she found him for his insolence. After searching for a while, she finally found him in the school courtyard. However, because she was squirming through the window, he was unable to hear her demand that he should stay still, leading to a Scooby-Doo chase around the school searching for each other till eventually Masamune caught up to her. When he attempted to grab her hand so she could halt, they clashed, causing them both to fall. When Aki asked why he was still coming after her amid his relationship with Yoshino, Masamune explained that he wasn't in a relationship with her friend, as he rejected her after her confession due to love for another. He apologized to her for all the misunderstandings and explained that his misdirected rage had made the first relationship toxic. He then reminded her of the fun they had in the past and asked her out again, causing Aki to blush as she accepted. After he complimented her new hairstyle and promised her it was the start of a new great arc for them, she requested they seal their newfound relationship with a kiss, which caught Masamune off guard, as he was considering the possibility of the hives returning and how cringe of a scene it would be. After getting himself together and assuring his system it would be okay, Masamune sealed Aki's lips, cementing an actual relationship between himself and the childhood friend. A few weeks later, the school had a cultural festival which ended in a campfire party. While the other students danced, Shuri Futaba talked about how close they were to graduating high school, meaning they would be separated soon enough. Although Kanetsugu tried to convince them there was a long way to go, Shuri was having none of it, as he began to plan outings they'd have in their last year of high school. Meanwhile, in a different part of the school, the two losing heroines, Fujinomiya and Yoshino, talked about how they had lost to the plot. When Fujinomiya asked why Masamune didn't break out in hives when touching Yoshino, she explained that it was simply because he was more comfortable with her as his friend. They looked down at the new happy couple, who prepared to dance beside the campfire. After Masamune teased Aki with the possibility of her dancing with Kanetsugu if he didn't step in at the amusement park, Aki laughed, remembering how long they had come to get to their relationship. With the fire's sparkling lights and the moonlight shining upon them, the new happy couple danced to celebrate their relationship, hoping for the best in the struggles to come.